Reading can be learned, and I don't care if you curse or steal, but don't ever podcast to me. Understood?
What's your favorite line,
No, I
Emily?
literally just took the top quote on the page because I was searching through them, and Emily, our guest, who I'm not introducing yet, said that she had multiple options, and I wanted to just get one out of the way so I could hear her throw her options out.
I just have one main one and then a second one that's sort of funny. Did the big podcast make her go mad?
That's good.
And also, pain is a podcast.
That's good. Here's another one I considered. At least I'll die with my podcast intact.
That's actually good.
That's good, right?
Because the word is cock.
The word is cock.
Cock.
With my little joke of a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't even have a good dick, right?
Yeah,
it's one of actually the largest, strongest recurring themes in the movie is that his
Everyone
dick sucks.
is necking this guy's dick.
Yeah.
which is really like disappointing. I think he is one of the more handsome people that's ever been on screen in the last like decade. So the idea that his dick sucks is very
Well, I think it's more like you know, he is very hot. We can talk about him. Ha Jung-woo. And I know he's a huge star in Korea,
Yeah, he's
right?
like
He's like one of the biggest
a lot of TV.
actors.
He's on some Netflix series too, I think. But yeah.
So God bless him for just being like, yeah, you want me to play like creepy bad dick fake count guy, like who sucks? I'll do it. Sounds good. Sounds like a good role.
I gotta say,
all these ladies get one over on me.
this is a thing I appreciate about having done this miniseries. Already being a big fan of Park Chan-wook's films and having seen the majority of them and loved them a lot, by and large, but not really having a tremendous amount of cultural context for them and considering them within that. And now, like, digging into all these movies and being like, oh, almost every time the leading man he's working with is, like, one of the biggest stars in South Korean cinema, like, heartthrob, legitimate, dramatic, heavyweight leading man, and he almost always casts them as, like, deranged cucks and villains and creeps. Like, he just emasculates them so thoroughly and destroys them in a way that I just, like... I always was watching them like, oh, he found a great character actor. And it's like, no, he keeps on making, like, Brad Pitt eat shit.
I feel like there must be a wait list, like a secret wait list for Park movies where, you know, like the highest ranking actors at any given time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like for a kidney, except it's like, I really want to get being a creep out of my system. And you know, he's the number one practitioner of creeps. And
it feels like career S&M.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, fucking ruin me, Park Chan-wook, destroy my image as a star.
Right. It's a rite of passage. It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, and it's just, he never lets them be cool.
Ironically, well, we can get to this, but he's not the one who has a ruined reputation after this film. But nothing to do with this film specifically.
No,
no,
you're right. It is.
Okay.
It speaks about.
Who is coolest?
What?
Who is his coolest male protagonist? All the boys in JSA, I suppose, are kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
I don't know.
Right?
But they're all kind of cucks to their respective militaries.
Yeah, they're cucks to their countries.
Yeah.
They all got cucked by patriotism.
National.
But they at least play guys who are playing at being leading men, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
Semi-convincingly.
They're all trying to do star performances.
Rain is very cute, and I'm a podcast, but I mean, I'm a cyborg.
That's his.
But he's wearing like a bunny hat and shit. Like,
but that's right. Yeah. That's his sweetest male lead.
Yeah,
but he's also deranged, right?
Song Kang-ho, I think, is very cool in Thirst, but he also
I think he's cool, but he's not like he doesn't get.
He's a broken man.
Yeah.
It's like that movie. That movie is almost like can you just will him to be sexy by having the movie just be so insane and and hot.
Right, but then like
I love that movie.
Old Boy, Mr. Vengeance, Decision to Leave, this are just like broken men.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
where he's working with all like huge stars.
Yeah,
you know, I think it's great. Who's like that here?
No, who like goes out of their way to break men on screen?
Like you look like shit.
Yeah, fuck
I don't
you.
know. I don't know.
Last time somebody really, really hot looked terrible in an American movie, like a man.
But like in a way that wasn't performative or stupid, you know, like 'cause sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, look at me."
But it just like looked shitty,
Brendan
but
Fraser,
was like, I thought he was pretty good in Will. This like thoroughly emasculated by the text of the film. That's the thing.
Right.
It's not just the way he makes them look.
Yeah. I still think oh god, I keep forgetting the name of the hot actor.
Ha Jung-woo.
But he still kind of gets out being cool. I think like if it ended
he's kind of cool.
in the scene before his last scene, then he would look kind of dumb. Yeah. But he really has like a cool, like he has a cool ending. I think he gets away looking pretty cool.
He does, but he also like he's able to die on his own terms, looking kind of cool, admitting that he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like part of the
every
ending,
man's dream.
Right. He just accepts that he's a piece of shit, and at least he's still got his cock in his hand.
And he didn't like. No one put him in an octopus tank or anything. Like when the octopus shows up, you're like, oh god, is there going to be a whole octopus thing?
Yeah, you know that octopus is going to go straight for the cock too. That's the other problem. Not to look.
Right.
Like he's the one. It's his final words.
Octocock. Introduce the podcast.
Coctopus. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
Coctopussy.
Coctopussy and 100 comedy points. It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want, emasculating South Korea's biggest leading men, and sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce. Baby, this is a mini-series on the films of Park Chan-wook. It's called I'm a Podcast, But That's Okay. Today we are talking what, David, I think you and I, no spoilers, agree is his masterpiece.
I think, yeah.
For me, it's my undeniable number one.
Yeah.
And it's beyond that, one of my favorite films of the last 10 years. It's called The Handmaiden. And returning to the show. Returning to the show for what is the 12th?
Who can keep
13th?
Let me fire up Blank Check Wiki, which I have bookmarked on my the top of my Chrome. Yeah.
Is this 12 main feed? Is this a Yoshida's dozen? The mother of Blankies herself, Emily Yoshida.
It's her 13th.
This is 13.
This is a Yoshida's dozen. Great. Well, hello, my children.
Hi.
Great to be back. Yeah, twice in the same. I think I went an entire year though, not being on the pod.
You did.
You were not
I
on
really
the pod
did
in
a little
2022.
like mercy. Like I kind of just broke down into like a little jog. Let some other people like think they could catch up.
No one's catching up.
But no.
Emily St. James is on our Stoker episode, and she pointed out that there was no Emily period on the podcast in 2022, which was an oversight.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear Emily on Stoker. This is being recorded in the past, but
even like Stefanski, there was no Emma. Even I want to say
no. Emma was because Emma did James and the Giant Peach.
But wasn't that top at 23?
Well, now I gotta
look
at that. I don't
My
know.
memory is that was first ep up.
Might be.
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was tail end.
It was Coraline. That was the first of the year.
Okay, so an Emma snuck in, but no Emily's.
Yeah, Emma's not an Emily. She's an Emma.
No, I know that. I was asking an adjacent question. The point is, yes, you'd let everyone catch up a little bit just to reassert your dominance.
Yeah. It's cruel, but necessary.
Yes.
Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
You wanted to discuss Park Chan-wook's film, The Handmaiden.
Coolest shit ever made.
You asked us if you could. We
did.
said yes.
We gave,
which was very kind of you. I didn't necessarily think I would get it because I figured everybody would want this movie, and I assume they all did because it's basically a perfect movie.
Yep.
But,
I feel like a lot of people did ask. I don't know. They would just put it on the list, right? Or just be like, well, I like Handmaiden.
There are a lot of moving puzzle pieces in scheduling this one for a number of reasons. This whole mini-series. And there was like a thought of someone who maybe wanted to do it where we held it off and didn't.
Oh, that's right. We weren't offering it.
We weren't offering it for a while.
Right.
We kind of took it off the board for a while.
I wanted to give it to someone fancy.
Yes. And who's fancier than Emily Yoshida?
Someone somewhere asked me to describe my personality with one word. I'm not kidding. I think it was probably on a dating app or something.
Sure. Cool.
And
good. Sounds good.
I did say fancy.
Yeah.
But
Fancy
I think I
is-
was drunk when I said that.
Well, you are very fancy. You and I feel like both have an appreciation for fanciness, Emily.
Yeah, we've got some tourist placements where,
Exactly.
yeah. Don't get me started on astrology with David Sims.
Oh boy.
I love astrology as a means of talking about myself. I don't really love it as a means of understanding the celestial universe or whatever. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
Just an organizational tool. I am looking up my blank check history just so I can remember the last time I was able to truly like gush over a movie, like like I have I have zero negative things to say about this movie. Spoiler alert. And I mean.
Tough
I
to
guess
beat
I
for
really
Dave.
like Dark Star. Obviously, it's not a perfect movie, but I really like it, and I was like, I wanted to make an argument for it. And then, I mean, and I know everybody hated this, but I really like Mad Max Fury Road, but it's not. I don't think I feel ecstatic about that movie the way I feel ecstatic
That
about
ep is
this
also.
movie.
I can't think about that episode because like an hour of it was lost.
Right.
We've revealed that before, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
An hour of it was
God.
lost, and
Yeah.
it was
That was
like-
in the dark Audio Boom studio times.
right, and it was also one of the last in-person
Yes.
pre-banked.
Yeah.
Yes, because we were already having to start to do Zooms for earlier episodes.
That's
No,
right.
that's a tough one to revisit. The episode turned out well. Ben did a good salvage
Oh,
job.
yeah.
Oh.
Castle in the Sky? Surely you have no beef with Castle in the Sky.
Oh no, Castle in the Sky I think was the last time I did a
Right.
full on like just this is my
Worship.
shit.
Babe.
I know every
Babe
detail
is
of it. Like
Patreon.
I can just, wax poetic on it.
Babe was not main feed, but I do feel like that episode was all three of us
that was
being
another
like,
one. Yeah. I
perfect-
will go
perfect
hard for Babe.
masterpiece.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
a perfect movie
Like,
also.
what are you
Babe
gonna
and
do?
then
Criticize Babe?
You can't. He's some good pig.
Yeah, he's good
he's
pick.
a very good
But
pig.
isn't
That's fucking
Charlotte.
Charlotte's Web, but
Yeah.
I think it still applies to Babe.
Wilbur. Wilbur is some pig.
He's also a good
Yeah.
pig. There can be two good pigs.
Yeah, I mean, that'll do honestly to both pigs.
That'll do.
Yes.
But The Handmaiden is really exciting. I also, sorry, I don't want to get too meta on my own blank check career, but I was thinking
it.
about it, and I believe I saw this movie for the first time the same day I saw Elle for the first time. Another movie. So
really?
who at TIFF? I did not go to Cannes that year, but I did catch up with it at TIFF. And was Elle at Cannes as well? can't
I'm
remember.
almost
I think it
certain that
was,
it
right?
was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
at TIFF,
so I
as
was
we
doing
both
my
know,
catch up there. That was a
when you-
good Cannes year, and I was really bummed to have missed it. That was like the one little gap in my brief career of going to Cannes that I was not there for that one. But yeah, I think I saw these films back to back,
Well,
and like what an incredible day. And then
Good-ass movie
maybe I
day.
saw Arrival either the day before or the next day, which is still like one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a fun time at the festival.
Well, when you get to TIFF on Thursday, Emily, we both know they show on Thursday morning all the Cannes movies. They do the
Right.
catch up day. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get just an injection of masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll watch like Parasite or Call Me by Your Name, whatever,
Sure.
whatever the hot,
Is-
Cannes and Sundance movies were.
Is this your favorite park film as well, Emily?
I was thinking about it. I really like Thirst a lot, and I wanted to
It's
watch
my number
it.
2.
I did a big park watch. I used to do this a lot, like back in the Netflix disc days. I would just queue them all up, queue up an entire filmography, and I remember doing that for him at around. I think because Thirst was his last film, and I remember just being blown away by it, and I think I've seen it once since then. But this one just being fresh in my mind and kind of remembering how excited I was to see it the first time, and there are certain moments in it where I remember being in the theater and being like, I'm watching what will become one of my favorite movies. And it's so exciting to have that feeling. So yeah, I think it's like, yeah, jury's out on Thirst. But
Thirst is very, very good.
it's up there.
I love Thirst, but
Yeah.
this is kind of like opus territory.
I'll say this too. They're in the UK. they released an extended cut of this. This film had different distributors in different territories. It was Amazon in the U.S. In the U.K., it was, what are they called? Curzon Artificial Eye?
Curzon?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think they both re-released it in theaters and then put it out on Blu-ray and maybe also streaming for a period of time in an extended cut that's 25 minutes longer.
Yeah.
And the American Blu-ray is out of print, so I imported the British one, which has the extended cut, and I watched both in the last 48 hours.
All right.
Okay.
And
Mister.
I was like, is this going to be a radical transformation, like plus up of the movie I already think is a perfect masterpiece? Or is it going to feel like it's padded out now and this is just kind of like a for nerds, like bonus stuff version? And instead, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I think I would just like truly any version of this movie. Like the way I feel about like the multiple cuts of Margaret, where I'm just like,
New
this,
World.
this movie is so in the pocket for me, has like such clarity about what it's saying, that even if you start rearranging the footage and shortening things and lengthening different things, I'm just all in on this.
That is surprising to me, though. I mean, I haven't seen the extended, but I think part of what makes this movie just perfect is the edit, and it feels like every single proportion of every section, every shot is just like exactly where it needs to be. So not that I doubt that it's also good, but that's amazing if it stands.
Like, it sort of just works as an entirely valid different version of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Reddit mostly says extended cut is worse. And Reddit's always right.
I would default to watching theatrical.
Yeah.
But I would not say the extended is
Not
worse.
like markedly worse, but sort of like, whatever. They don't seem enthusiastic about it. They're like, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple little structural changes, and a lot of it is there's some alternate take stuff. It's more just interesting of like when a movie's this much of a stone cold masterpiece, it's interesting to watch like slightly different alternate universe versions of it that make you consider how they got to the choices they did in the first place.
I get very scared with that. I don't like it sometimes. I'm like, no. I love my movie. Like,
Sure.
I don't want the different one.
I think it was also not like, oh, this was his earlier cut that then they
No,
made
he
him
was
cut down.
asked to make it.
After the fact, they were like, do you want to
have
stretch it out?
more?
Yes.
I think it's probably the dossier. We can mention it. But yeah, no, I think the film was so popular. They were like, do you have more? Could you do an extended?
Yeah.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's still good, but it's not like a transformative thing. But yeah, I'm just like, I just think this thing is so locked in.
I was gonna say I don't even know where to begin with it. I mean, it. I feel like the stuff that I'm really interested in about it, like I've actually had a really hard time finding a lot of comprehensive writing in English about kind of the whole setting and the significance of setting this book called Fingersmith by
Sarah Waters.
Sarah
Waters runs deep.
The significance of putting it there and what that does to the plot without ever being like, it's never really didactic about it, but it's just like, what if we stuck this story in this different water, no pun intended, and let it cook?
10 comedy points. Yeah.
And I that's the majority of what I've been doing to prep for this podcast, is just trying to have
understand the sort of
more than my gist of what's going on really explored. But I mean, I just think, well, the one thing I was going to ask you guys was, do you have can you think of any other films that, or I guess any kind of story that does this? That's an adaptation that
there's something so obvious.
Resets it. And the one I could think of was Burning, like that, but that
Yeah.
That's right.
is
that
another,
Japanese story. Right.
But Thirst also does this as a less direct translation.
Yep.
But
right.
When we were doing that episode, we
Therese Raquin.
Right. It's a closer, more direct adaptation, not just a loosely
I feel
inspired by, but totally transposed onto something else. I was thinking about this on the way in, but this is the kind of thing that more often happens with like Shakespeare plays, right?
Right.
Where people are like, I'm going to recontextualize
totally.
this by putting this in a different era and a different culture and whatever. And it doesn't often happen with more modern adaptations.
Right.
And because like Old Boy is a pretty radical adaptation, although it's not changed as much culturally. Then Thirst is like a very radical adaptation.
Right.
I assume this was just how he likes to work. And then what JJ pulled up in his research was that like he was entirely preparing to do a more faithful adaptation of Fingersmith.
Right.
And then he found out the TV version existed.
Oh, interesting. There's already a TV version.
There's a Sally Hawkins BBC miniseries.
Sure, sounds pretty good.
Yes, that I think
I want
was.
to watch that.
It sounds fucking good.
The book is
Yeah.
different, though. I will say as well. He did change the back half of the book quite a lot.
Yeah, but I think he was going to do a British
Right.
period corset piece kind of thing.
Sure.
And then I think once he found out that existed, there had already been a literal adaptation. Then he sort of did the creative. I mean, we'll dig into it more, but the creative exercise of how can I transpose this into a different place in time that adds some new layer to it. And then once he did that, he started making more changes to the story. And he and Sarah Waters eventually landed on a inspired by credit rather than adapted from, even though it is very much from the book.
Yeah. Yeah, the first half particularly is very close to it. I haven't read the book. I've wanted to.
Yeah, the first half is the same, and
Yeah.
the second half is quite different. Basically, the big difference is they are not in on it when she gets put in the asylum. Like that's he adds that later
Interesting.
twist.
Okay.
Like that happens in the book. That happens. She doesn't realize she's going to get put in the asylum, and she knows that the switcheroo is happening.
Right.
And does the book just end with her in the asylum?
No. Then
the
they
turn
do,
happens later.
but she gets out by herself.
Gotcha.
Finds her, and then a lot of stuff happens, and it's just different. But it does sound cool. I mean, Sarah Waters also wrote a book called Tipping the Velvet.
Okay.
Which means doing something a bit naughty.
I was going to say, that's the most euphemistic sounding thing I've
You
ever
mean
heard.
something a fingersmith might get up to?
Yeah.
Yes. And it was turned into a mini series for the BBC in 2002, written by Andrew Davies, who wrote the Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice and many other like Tony adaptations. And it was so controversial.
Because
it had boobs in it.
What?
And it was like, our government's
Ew.
paid for this?
Yeah.
Lesbians?
also the amount of velvet they tipped in this fucking thing.
Very expensive.
The velvet budget was.
Oh.
And so I'm sure it was a gigantic hit for the BBC, like despite all the controversy.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised they also adapted Fingersmith. Let me give you some context. We're talking this stuff anyway. So yes, obviously the film that Park made before this is Stoker.
Right.
What do you think of Stoker, Emily?
I like Stoker. I think it's flawed, but a really interesting movie. I think it's unfortunately like horny in a way I can't even like deal with.
You're allowed. All green lights.
What?
It's
Sorry.
all green lights. It is
Yeah.
definitely, somewhat unfortunately horny.
Fortunately horny.
It is rare,
That would
though.
be a really
I
good
feel
name
like.
for a podcast. If I do like start a sexy movie podcast, I would call it Unfortunately Horny.
I was going to say, though, I feel like few movies tip that scale for you.
Tip that velvet.
Tip that velvet for you of like,
Yeah.
unfortunately too horny.
So after he makes Stoker, he does make a short film called Day Trip, which I have not seen. I assume you guys probably haven't seen that either. Does bring him back to Korea.
But I didn't realize how much post-Stoker he was in the headspace of, I will continue making English language films.
He's planning to make The Brigands of Rattleborge, which we talked about, I think. The famed S. Craig Zoller Western that has never been made.
Do you hear that sound?
What's that?
It's a ponytail being pulled and slicked back.
That's a horrible noise that you're making.
Well, that's what it sounds like every morning when S. Craig Zoller
have you heard
takes
of
out the car wax, pulls that ponytail
I've
back with all
never
his
heard
might.
of this before. My God.
It is like, it was a #1 blacklist script long ago. It was, I guess, how S. Craig Zoller emerged onto the scene. All right, stop doing
It's the
that.
final time. I just, well, you have to stop saying his name.
And
Well, it must be amazing. There's never been a bad script that's come from the blacklist.
Exactly. It is
straight bangers. Well,
this may surprise you to hear, filled with extreme violence.
What?
Which
Weird.
Park found intriguing.
But also, I'm sure the characters exist within clear moral lines.
Well, apparently it's about a sheriff and a doctor who seek revenge against a group of bandits who use the cover of a torrential thunderstorm to rob and terrorize the occupants of a small town. I mean, it sounds pretty fucking good, honestly.
Yeah.
But
and
also, like, if Park Chan-wook wanted to make an S. Craig Zoller scripted Western, I probably would be interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd probably want to see that. But
and that's what he said, by the way, was like him making an English language film in the first place with Stoker was almost means to an end for him of, I want to make an American Western. That is what interests me.
You wanted to make like a Robert Aldrich movie.
My number one reason I'd want to even set a foot into the American film industry is to be able to make a Western. So he was thinking, I will use Stoker to finally realize that dream. But this film never gets made.
So we have also a crime film called Corsica 72.
Mm-hmm.
Written by Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, the Bond guys.
Yes.
Which was, I don't know, some other script he got linked to about best friends living on Corsica. One becomes an honest working man, one becomes a gangster, and they feud over a woman.
I mean, sounds good.
Sounds pretty good.
I just want to shout out credit to JJ, our researcher. He used the term of, found the director getting a serious case of the, quote, attaches for the first time in his career.
Attached to things.
I think this is a good blank check term for when directors, the post Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro period of just like, I'm going to attach myself to 80,000 things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Your hot stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, he was also attached to a film called Second Born, written by someone called David Jagernaut. And it's a sci-fi action film, sort of Philip K. Dick-esque. He said, we don't know much else about it. I don't know, never happened. He was also attached to, or maybe rumored to, he was not. He said that this is not true, that he was rumored to be making The Revenant with Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel Jackson was trying to make a very different version of the Revenant story.
Would be
he
pretty
was
different because Hugh
book.
Glass was not
Correct.
black.
Right.
Although, you know, sure.
I think it was maybe more of a Handmaiden style adaptation of the idea of someone surviving this kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was sent the book. He doesn't even remember whether or not he read it. But the fact that the material had been sent to him for interest somehow got circulated by the press as him being attached.
Well, that's what I was going to say about the attaches. I think more often than not, it has nothing to do with the actual director. It's more like they're hot right now and anybody would like to be even rumored to be working with them.
To be on this list.
I think they do often do that thing where like they send a script to the hottest director in town and then reps will leak to the press.
Yeah. They're reading.
Blank is eyeing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a script on their desk. It's a thing in their fucking inbox.
Yeah.
I'm
eyeing my electric bill for this month.
Sounds like you got a case of the attaches, Emily.
Yeah. I just think it would be really interesting to recontextualize it in another setting.
Eyeing?
Sorry. Stupid.
Emily Ankle's electric bill.
Yeah.
Refuses to pay.
All right, Fingersmith.
Boffo Electric's bill. Yeah, go on.
Book comes out in 2002. Booker Prize shortlist.
Sure.
Acclaimed Sally Hawkins BBC One miniseries.
Yes.
And then years later, Sid Lim, who produced several Park films, chucks it to him and says, "What do you think?" He reads it, end of part one with the first of many twists. He's like, "Whoa, crazy."
I mean, we've talked about Park loves a good twist middle.
Yeah.
That's already how he likes to structure his stories.
Yeah.
So he gets to that point, end of part one, he must have just been like fucking hooting and hollering.
Yeah. It's very, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Mr. Vengeance a little bit. Like, you know, just that kind of switcheroo, like kind of handshake in the middle, which is always very fun. I was so glad I wasn't familiar with Fingersmith before because I remember that twist hitting like insane. I remember people gasping in the theater. Like, it's so fun.
No, I went into this, I remember just being dead cold, knowing nothing outside of it played really well at festivals, and I like Park's movies.
I knew it was based on this book, but I had not read Fingersmith. I have still not read it, I confess.
Hey.
But so I did not know. Yeah, I just knew I knew there might be twists, but it's sort of his thing again.
Yeah. I dare say this movie doesn't just have twists. This movie's a goddamn bag of pretzels.
This movie is a pot of spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Rotini, more
tangled up. Well, that's fair.
I keep my spaghetti straight and separated.
Right, you don't cook it.
I don't cook it, and I lay all the pieces out laterally in front of me on a table, and I just bite into them one at a time. Crunch, crunch, crunch.
He also he was drawn to the idea of making a film where the protagonists are two women.
Yes.
So whatever. Woke mind virus got him, I guess.
Well, I think we've talked about, but
I'm joking when I say that. I realize I should just do clarification.
And also, you're allowed to say that because you have been fighting a severe case of the woke mind virus. This isn't you mocking it.
It's terminal.
Right, you're a survivor. You live with it every day. It is terminal and inoperable. No, the woke mind virus did get to him, but we've talked about a lot of his career was him from Old Boy on trying to give his female characters more agency, center them more in the story, after feeling like he used them as sort of plot devices or story functions in his first couple of films. On top of that, he also said he had wanted to make a queer film for a long time. And the thing he was looking for was a queer story that is not about prejudice, which is a thing that is really interesting about this movie. That it's this is a movie with a tremendous amount of tension and dramatic stakes, but none of those stakes come from the fact that they are queer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's never really commented on. You don't really get a sense of from Tucc, if she knows she's even a lesbian, before meeting Lady Hideko, but it just kind of feels well, I'm super, super horny for this person, so I'm just gonna roll with it because I can't help it, and it feels very liberated in that way.
And even when our villain, our cuck villain,
the count, because the uncle is even bigger villain in a way,
villains, right? They're like the entity in Gabriel. Modern parlance, we all understand now. Even when it clicks for him that she is gay, it feels like he says it to her I realized you're left-handed.
Yeah.
Right. There's no judgment about it. As much as he is clearly attracted to her, it's just I understand you. I had misperceived you. His quote is, I was wanting to make a film that deals with the subject of homosexuality, and I didn't want to handle in the way that the protagonists are pained or troubled over their sexual identity, and they're grappling with society's perspective on them, that they're discriminated against, that they have to fight for their sexual identity. I just want to tell a love story about the character's emotions and how natural and organic it is. And that's so much of what I find interesting about this movie is it's their love is in conflict with everything else around them, which doesn't have to do with their love in a certain way.
I think it would be a little pat on a hat to have that be an issue for them, just because there's so much going on politically and culturally and stuff there that, in a way, the queerness feels more like a mode of freedom outside of this incredibly restrictive sort of setting that they're both in.
It's this one organic thing that breaks through out of this whole structure.
That's not that deep also.
No,
it's just
it's pretty just visceral.
Yeah.
So Sarah Waters catches wind that Park wants to adapt her book. She sits down and watches Old Boy.
Right.
Says, I loved it because it was so gloriously excessive. Melodrama isn't the word, really. It's more Greek myth, which I think is an accurate read, obviously.
I think so.
I think,
it's a very
I think that's mostly what he traffics in is Greek myth. And I think that this film does a good job of kind of maintaining that. And I guess it's because it's based on non-Greek myth material. It's not an original story, but I think it still maintains that sort of heightened reality while having characters in it that still feel extremely real and not like they are creations for the purpose of a parable or something.
I would agree with that. She said that basically her publisher, her agent, whoever said hey, there's some interest in doing a South Korean adaptation of Fingersmith. And she was like, oh, that's weird and interesting. I assume nothing will come of it. And that it was only then maybe a year in when someone relayed to her, it's Park Chan-wook, it's the Old Boy guy. And she hadn't seen his movies but knew him by reputation, was oh, I didn't realize it was the guy wants to make this.
Yeah. So, Park loves the book. The silver thumb thimble tooth grinding scene, he says, he just, he wanted to see that outside of the confines of the type page.
We all wanted to see that.
Right. Yeah. Forky was like, what is she doing when that scene began? I think because she wasn't paying attention. There's so much here.
The whole sort of like the way the movie plays with perception and seeing the same events multiple times and recontextualizing them. He's like, that's an inherently cinematic thing. You can do that on the page, but you're never going to do it better than you can with editing.
Well, to take an audience back to the same scene with new information is such a delight, especially in this film, obviously. There's the fear that it will feel boring, but this film never feels boring.
Well, I think that a cool thing in this one to go back and retread is it's not just for plot purposes, although that's obviously, the plot gets thicker in the second section, but there's also just like appreciating the moments that you thought you understood before have a different emotional meaning. You remember this one scene between the characters, but then yes, it's different for the purposes of plot, but also you're like, I thought that character was feeling this way here because she laughed or something. But it was different. Like, it was totally a different. I read it wrong. Like, just because of the perspective that you have the first time. It's really cool. It's a cool.
And you can replay the same footage, but just now the context of how you're viewing it is differently, or you give us extra time at the beginning and end of what we previously saw that resets it or whatever. Like that, it's just so effective. I don't know. He's so good at this sort of like, I'm gonna only let the audience know what I want them to know when I want them to know it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of his movies, the first chunk of it, you are kind of purposefully disoriented, which is a thing that's still difficult to do well, which is keep an audience invested in a story they know they don't quite understand yet. To keep people hooked rather than frustrated when information is being withheld from them. And then you get to the point halfway through or whatever where he starts like unraveling the thing, right?
Yeah.
And this is a movie where you think actually for the first whatever, oh, this is more conventional and straightforward than most of his narratives are. The fact that you were going into this understanding basically from minute 10 on the Handmaiden's path into this world and what her objectives are and the count and everything, to then have the thing where you think, I think I have the full deck of cards in my hand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I know exactly what I'm playing with. And then end of part one, he introduces a second deck. It's like such a masterful trick to make you feel cocky that you understand the movie better than you do.
Yeah.
And then just immediately introduce all these new wrinkles into it.
The only thing that would give you any, whiff of suspicion that something else is going on is if you look at your watch and you're like, this movie is, however, 2 hours something, and we are reaching about the midpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Griffin. I want you to be quiet while I ask you a question. Mon balade te plaît? Mon podcast vous plaît? That's apparently mon balado te plaît? Mon podcast vous plaît? Those are the informal and formal ways to ask in French, do you like my podcast? Now, with you, Griffin, I'm going to go informal. Mon balado apparently is a more informal way to refer to a podcast. But I've been learning to speak French with Babbel, and you can too. Because with Babbel, you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. I speak some French. It's a good way to brush up, but they've got all kinds of languages to study. Babbel is the second best way to earn a language. The best way is through immersion, living where the language is spoken natively, using it every day. That's not possible for everyone. So what's second best? Babbel, because you can start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are little more than games, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. It's designed by real people for real conversations. All the tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching. It helps you improve your pronunciation and accent, and which is really crucial for actually like coming off like a normal person in another country. And it gets you like real life conversation skills, like how to order food or ask for directions, how to talk to a merchant without having to pull up your phone and check an app while on vacation. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. For instance, one study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. There's over 10 million subscriptions sold. So here's a special limited time deal for our listeners to get you started right now. Get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/check. That 55% off babbel.com/check, spelled BABBEL.com/check. Rules and restrictions may apply. Babbel.com/check. Okay, so Park finds out, yes, there's a BBC adaptation. The producer, Sid Lim, comes up with the idea. Why don't we move the setting to 1930s Korea? I'm going to give you a lot from Park here, Emily, that may help, with context. The idea being it was also a period of transition. The country was going through modernization. Here's Park. It was the time in history when modern cultures and modern civilization made their way into Korea. The idea of the mental hospital. In the movie, we say the mental hospital is located in Japan, but the very notion of it was so unfamiliar to Korean society at the time. Everything that came from the West came via Japan during that time.
Yeah.
So he wants to, the idea of like everything filtering in through Japan. So there's modernity, but it's also like coming in with this like cultural, through this cultural prism that's not Korean.
And there's sort of this like kind of almost like shark eating the shark of this Western culture that sort of, in a way, not at all, like, I mean, these are very different situations, but it came to Japan very suddenly in a way that was not like hostile necessarily, but would have felt insane when if you were there during the Meiji Restoration when Japan opened up and suddenly there were, a zillion Europeans coming into the country and being like, ooh la la, I love Japanese stuff. And then, you see the development of, like Western style architecture and stuff and like around that time. And it must have felt crazy. And then you see kind of a similar thing literally with this house being this crazy Frankenstein hybrid of this Japan and Western English style.
Exactly. Like the house is designed exactly to reflect that. There's a Western wing, Japanese wing. They've been mechanically put together. Yeah. It's this insane fusion of two styles.
Looks rad and I would live there.
That's incredible.
I wouldn't live there because the vibes
it's cursed.
Are bad. Yeah.
Some good shit happens. Some of it is
where you're like, this tree is so pretty. And they're like, yes, a woman died there and it took her soul.
Yeah, and now it blooms beautifully.
And I'm like, a lot of trees, and they're like so many that you never see the sun. And I'm like, is everything just kind of odd? Yeah. Like, seems good, but is actually bad?
A little bit.
I love the idea of like a Selling Sunset type tour of this house. Like, the owner has said they would let you keep the octopus for an extra $20K.
What did the octopus do? Why was it there? Well, So, right. The whole thing is ridiculous, though. Mm-hmm. The way that people who work in the house take off their shoes when they're in the Japanese wing, put them back on when they enter the Western wing. Like, Park loves all of this. Like, the library looks like in a Japanese building. When you put inside, it's got Western bookcases. And then you go past that, and there's Japanese tatami mats on the floor. Like, all this stuff. Like, it's probably not registering for American audiences in the same way, I guess. Oh, but like there is just something peculiar about the architecture that probably even like a complete layperson can get. That this is not like what houses look like.
And it's not an out of realm of possibility idea. I mean, the oldest neighborhoods in Tokyo have a lot of this sort of stuff that feels like you've got, like I was saying, like you have both this Western influence and the more traditional influence in it, especially like a lot of fetishization of like French stuff and English stuff and stuff. But so that idea is not crazy. I think it's just, but it is sort of, I was thinking of like, it is one of these sets, especially that big hall with the tatami and the stage at the end. Mm-hmm. It's like, it is one of these sets that's just like so made for this story. Like every element of it is so specific to the story. I was thinking of kind of like the apartment in Old Boy as well, like which is less
the one that he's locked in.
No, not the hotel. Well, yeah, I mean that's obviously a very specific plot necessary structure, but I guess like just the way that it felt so intentional, the way it was constructed, like kind of like knowing that in a very theatery way, knowing that a certain kind of set of events are going to unfold in this highly specific space. Is it's cool. The mats that lift out and have the water underneath, and all of that is so so interesting. I love it.
Obviously, this is also reflected in the brilliant choice, and this is not in the novel at all, of the subtitling being in two languages with two colors, and the sort of nuances, which especially on rewatch, you pick up more and more of when a character might shift. The torture scene at the end is the one Park cites. The uncle speaks Korean for the first time in the film during the torture scene.
Yep.
Because obviously he mostly wants to come off as this Japanese, man of taste.
He has like aggressive self-hatred for the fact that he was not born Japanese.
I think he's pretty chill. And I think he's figured it out. I think he's done a lot of work on himself. He's clearly normal.
He knows himself. I think you could say that.
He's comfortable in his own skin.
His tongue is definitely black for good reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta keep that pen.
Waters, they pitch all this to Waters, and she's like, "Sounds good, bro. I think you get the novel. You're gonna leave it, the heart of it, intact. So go for it." Park and his frequent co-screenwriter Chung Seo-kyung do it all without any further intervention. They do come up with the inspired by thing, and that's when they change the title. Which is good because Fingersmith is such a specific title.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds
like
very,
that wouldn't
very
make any
British.
sense as the title of this. It does sound very British.
Yeah.
You're a Fingersmith then, I don't know.
It'd be cool if they did say, if they did have to say the word Fingersmith in English, but they had to do that accent for it, and it was in a third cover. It was in in blue.
Fingersmith.
She's like, "Can you have one English kid?" So there's one chimney sweep in the film for some reason.
Bert.
Bert's there.
Bert the Fingersmith.
The novel also, according to Park, has no comedy.
Yes.
So he says anything that's kind of funny
yes.
is him.
Right.
And this movie is it's fun.
Yeah.
I guess it has funny stuff.
There's a quote from him. It's in this chunk, if I could find it in time, but that his friend pointed out to him, you can never let a scene go on too long without throwing in some sort of comedic subversion. And he had never clocked it, but he's like, I think it makes me uncomfortable if something is too self-serious for too long. And so the more melodramatic the events of his film becomes, the more he feels the need to acknowledge the absurdity of the situation or throw surprising behaviors in on top of what's going on,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's true for his other films simply because there's so much brutality and just truly dark, bleak stuff in it that if you don't have an occasional reminder of a director's hand, of a writer's hand in there being it's all it's invented, this is I did this for the movie,
yes.
You kind of need that release every now and then to be it's a movie, all these children aren't actually dying.
Right. I think David needs to be reminded of every one of these episodes we've done.
Yeah,
this one I was there's definitely no child stuff in this one, and there's just a little smidge of it.
Not great to this kid.
Yeah. Forky ran out of the room. Literally ran out of the room
when they do the flashback.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can talk about it when we get there. But we were texting about this, David, about your aversion to child death, which is really weird. I think you should examine that.
Yeah,
but
you should.
I and
you were there's no child death in Handmaiden.
Problem with it. I guess no problem isn't right, but it is more alarming to me in this movie for very specific reasons, but we'll get there.
It's a very powerful movie in every way as well. It's just, you're really in it. Apparently they consulted a queer friend of his co-screenwriter, Seo-kyung, who demanded they include the scissor sex.
Okay.
Because I remember, when this movie came out, some people being did they have to scissor in the film? How much scissoring do people do? And I was come on, it's all part of the, opulence of this film.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
They only scissor, though, with the bells. I would say that. And I feel that might be a different sort of...
No, they scissor before the
Oh,
bells.
no,
They
that's
scissor
true.
in the
That's
middle.
true.
Yeah.
When they have the, the meme
when they're
of
going,
the two
you're
hands.
natural.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
They're clasped hands.
Yeah.
I feel somebody should do the clasped like bicep arm meme with that.
It's right. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers moment.
Yes.
What if that was the scene in Predator? Was they go in for the clasp hands and then they cut out and the two of them are scissoring?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Just being like, we're going to catch the Predator.
This dossier is too long, and I can tell because JJ's apologizing for that in the dossier.
Yeah.
All right, so
I think there's plenty we'll get to as we get to it in the plot. There's a lot.
Kim Tae-ri, though, we should shout out, who plays Suki. It's her first film.
Yes.
She was plucked, from thousands of auditions. 1470, so 1,400 something.
He has a great line that I just think is good advice to anyone who listens to this podcast and makes movies or aspires to do any sort of dramatic storytelling with actors. He said, I would like to say one thing about the casting process. If you find yourself in a situation where you're wondering if anyone from the shortlist is the right person for the role, that probably means that none of them are right. And they they auditioned over 1,000 people, and he just kept on being like, a couple of them could maybe work. And then he trusted himself, I'm not doing it until the person walks in who undeniably feels like they're the right personality match for this.
Yeah.
And even though it was someone who was pretty green and untested, he was just like, she's got the right attitude.
So she's never been in a movie before. Now, Kim Min-hee is red hot when he's casting her. He's putting a total newbie up against a gigantic star, I feel like.
Which is like the right dynamic
perfect
that you
dynamic.
Want as long as the newbie can hold her own, which she is so incredible in this. I remember reading that it was her first movie when it came out, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. She's just so confident.
She rules, and I have not seen her in a movie since.
She's big on TV too. She's in a show called Mr. Sunshine, which is a big Netflix.
I'm
Korean
aware
film.
of Mr. Sunshine.
It's also set during the
it stars
the
Matthew
annexation.
Perry.
Right. Allison Janney.
No, and also she was in that film Space Sweepers, which was one of those Korean films that was number one on Netflix for weeks. But I have not seen Space Sweepers.
Interesting.
One thing in looking at a lot of filmographies, both for this film and other ones that you guys have been covering in it, is just how heavy a presence Netflix has in Korean entertainment right now.
Yes.
It's like everything, every show and I think most of them are Netflix productions. They're not purchases. It
feels like they very smartly saw that there was an opening in the market and an audience that was underserved, and that this stuff had the ability to cross over and just started investing money early on the ground floor. I mean, even this just being an Amazon co-production is really interesting, because this is coming out of an era where Amazon is doing a lot of good in their film division, but a lot of it is taking 90s indie auteurs who can't get movies made anymore and giving them the money to make their thing that's been lying on the shelf for a while.
Yep.
There are so many frustrating Amazon productions to me this time, because I refuse to have Prime. I will never pay for Prime. If I watch something on Prime, it's because I stole somebody's password. Yeah, I said it, Bezos. Arrest me.
A terrible company that's done many horrible things.
This one is frustrating. I did watch this time around on what's it called, Freebie. So there were ads, but whatever. I'd seen it before, so it was fine. That's annoying. The Suspiria is annoying. Peterloo is annoying to have it be. I want a Peterloo disc so bad. I don't know if that exists, but
I would love a Peterloo disc. I don't know that there is one.
Like Amazon's Annapurna era.
Yeah,
it was. Yes, it was. Them, like you say. Oh, there's a Blu-ray. Oh, it looks like it's a British Blu-ray, but still.
Are there zones for Blu-ray? I don't. There are. Yeah.
Although increasingly more and more of them
sometimes
are region free.
They're region free. Yeah. And the 4K discs are always region free.
Yeah, you got to get that region free player. That's what I got for that extended Handmaiden. Point is, I feel like this era when Amazon and Netflix come in, Netflix started doing a lot of the great unmade projects were finally going to give people the money to make their fucking movies, and almost all of them sucked when they came out. And the Amazon ones were mostly good.
Yeah.
Like the Mutes of the world versus
Mute. Remember Mute?
Right, and that was one of those things where it was years of being why won't anyone give Duncan Jones the money to make Mute? And then Netflix gives them money. You're like, oh, because the script sucks.
Right.
Because
no one thought to tell him it was a butt script.
Right. And Amazon kind of did a run of really good auteur films before. Now they pivoted to doing whatever the fuck they're doing now.
Well, didn't I read somewhere that Citadel cost something like, what did it cost? It wasn't as much as
Citadel
Rings of
cost
Power, but it was
$1 squintillion.
Yeah.
The funny thing with Citadel was that they like made another version of it that they didn't air.
They essentially made two full seasons of
Amazon's
Citadel.
Idol, shall we say?
Yes, it was. No, Citadel cost like $400 million.
Yeah, but it was good. Though.
It was so
this
good.
Is the but this is the
so
shit
good.
that just makes anybody who's ever tried to get anything made in this fucking industry want to rip their eyes out and quit and jump into the ocean.
Look, there's the phenomenon that a lot of these places, when they're trying to get their foot in the door to be seen as legitimate, the way they do that is presenting themselves as like great patrons of the art.
Well, yeah.
We are not looking to make a profit. We are looking to enrich the culture. And they hired Ted Hope, who has like a great track record in indie film, and sort of went like, bring us the guys who are struggling to get their films made in the current system, and we're going to give them the freedom and flexibility. And then once they had their foothold, they were like, great, all we want to do now is Citadel. Everything should be Citadel.
I mean, because all of these are going to be loss leaders. Nobody's going to make money off of these.
Right.
But it's just PR to go to Cannes and have a film by Lynn Ramsey or whoever there. And everybody's
and then
like,
also,
oh my God.
once you've like gotten that positive goodwill, then you're able to competitively bid for fucking Dwayne Johnson's Santa Claus action movie, which he wouldn't do.
Yeah, because you know
unless...
that Dwayne Johnson was a big Lynn Ramsey head. He's seen
who's
Mormon Color like 80 times.
You were never really here.
Getting us off this. You know who's in Citadel?
Who?
Stanley Tucci.
It's got a touch of the two.
Oh, wow. Well, that must have been half the budget.
Yeah.
Here's something I want to float.
Okay.
I was having lunch with Olivia Craig yesterday.
Congratulations.
And we brought this up. We had brought it up with each other once before.
Okay.
We think Tucci may have lost the touch.
When was the last
Tucci
time Tucci touched?
Fuck. Ben, get on mic. Hold on. We need to dig into this because I know Ben's going to have strong opinions here.
Absolutely. Spotlight. Tucci was great.
This is a necessary tangent. Folks, please give this to us. We have to talk about this. Okay.
Since then, it's a lot of what? It's a lot of huh?
Okay.
Now
you guys should do a Patreon mini series on just Tucci's touches.
Because obviously the man has pivoted into Italian cookbook and like travel show and all that. Like now I'm apron wearing Tucci. I'm making red sauce. We're talking about pesto.
Worth was his last feature, it sounds like.
He's pretty good in Worth. It's sort of like a version of his Spotlight performance where he's like the nervy guy.
Yes.
That's about as close as I would get to like a classic touch of the Tucci.
Can I just speed round
it's
this?
Tough.
He was in the Whitney Houston biopic. Never mind.
He sure was, as Clive Davis.
Spotlight.
Wait,
arguably...
what? Okay, I didn't see that. That's insane.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Spotlight for me, arguably his best performance. I think he's phenomenal.
He's wonderful in Spotlight.
But then post Spotlight, he does his final Hunger Games performance in 2015. Okay, and then after that, here's his entire movie career: Mastro Cadenza in Beauty and the Beast remake, Merlin in Transformers: The Last Night.
Yep.
The Children Act, Submission, A Voice in Snow Dogs, Patience. Most of these don't exist. Rosamund Pike's A Private War, Night Hunter, The Silence.
What the fuck?
These are like all the movies that I had to review at Vulture.
Supernova.
Right,
you're either like, it doesn't exist or it's a disaster. The Witches. Zemeckis' The Witches.
Yep.
What the fuck is Jolt?
It was like one of those.
It's a cola from the like late 90s, I believe.
Not to invoke Amazon again, but it was like Amazon's, girl boss action movie.
United
Kate
States
Beckinsale.
Ambassador in The King's Man. He does 2 promotional short films for Tanqueray.
Yes, I mean, which look,
money.
It's a touch of the cha-ching.
Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, Clive Davis, 7 episodes of Citadel, and then his most recent film is called Shalom Amore. I'm sorry.
Even know what that is.
It's a podcast. It's a fucking narrative podcast.
So I'm just. It's not like Tucci, can't get it back.
But he
He's
has
a good
that
actor.
the last 5 years, he has the career. Actually, you could argue like the last 10 to 15 years. He has the career of somebody that like some producer who just never actually watched a movie from start to finish in their lives is like, he's British, right?
Yes.
Ben, you said the touch of the Tucci about Captain America 1, right? Was that when you? I can't remember when you said that.
And it's so long ago.
After he was in that was truly when it started to be like he works constantly.
Yeah.
And like, it's sort of like some of it's goodness, some of it's like.
Are you sure it wasn't in the Devil Wears Prada episode? I mean, that's where you coined your phrase that I think is so good. That's the moment where we all decided he should be on money. That's the moment where it was like, this man needs to be on our currency.
Yeah.
Look, we all were in love.
Here's what's most worrying to me. He's got 2 upcoming projects listed on IMDb.
Yeah.
One of them is the new Russo brothers project.
It sure is.
The Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt robot movie.
Yep.
And the other one is the All Quiet on the Western Front guy's new movie, where he plays a cardinal.
I mean, that one looks like it'll be, like Emily's saying, like some kind of, okay, boring shit with British guys going well, but the cardinal said no. It actually sounds really good.
I want him to surprise me again.
No, I want him to surprise me too.
As long as the series or the show is called The Cardinal Says No! Exclamation
the Cardinal! I just want the best for Tucc.
I do too.
Okay, I found the episode. It was The Terminal.
It was the
wow, which not a great film and not his best performance,
but just a little.
The
you're just sort of happy to see him
in that movie.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and he's taking the functional role, and he's just giving a little paprika.
Yeah,
and then he was instead giving a little paprika to his frickin' meatballs again.
Well, the Italian travel show got canceled, right?
I mean, how much can he be doing that? Yeah,
I think it finally got canceled.
Okay.
There's a lot of regions in Italy, David.
I suppose so. Do you think there are these like Italian grandma ladies who like make food on the top of a mountain, and every 6 months like Eugene Levy's showing, some celebrities like, "Hi, I'm here with Apple. We're gonna fucking make some pesto on this mountain." It's like, okay, here we go.
I heard that Searching for Italy got canceled because the Cardinal said no.
The Cardinal. No. Keep the Tucci out. His output is so bad.
I don't want it to touch.
The Pope wants him to be in something good. He can't come back until he gets another Oscar nom.
The Pope says maybe try to make another movie with Shaloub.
If it's on a streamer, we don't like it. It needs to work with a studio.
We don't have the Netflix here.
Yes, have to touch it with the comedy.
And definitely don't direct a movie with Armie Hammer in it. No. Okay, well, can Russell Crowe visit? No. Keep him off the moped.
Oh my god.
All right, The Handmaiden.
The Handmaiden
is set in 1930s Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Korea is still under Japanese rule, right?
Yeah.
Is it 30s? Okay, I was trying to. Yeah.
So it's never specified.
It's never
Emily,
specified
in the film, but apparently that is what Park says in the interviews, and that seems logical to me
by
in terms of the modernity.
Fashions, sort of. That's like your one thing that you can really.
And you got cars, you got obviously electricity.
It was like 20s
on
or
a
30s.
big scale, right?
Yeah. But there was, because the annexation happened in 1910.
Yes.
And then there was like a uprising in 1919. And I think then that's I feel like things got very aggressive after that.
After 1919, there's a treaty where it's like formalized, not with the consent of, Koreans, really, but Japan declares that it is in charge of Korea. And then they Japanize. I don't know how, like the Japanization of the country starts to happen, right? They're building railroads and they're doing all kinds of stuff.
They're doing a little enforced industrial revolution in there, and, building schools and stuff and creating all this infrastructure that, it sounds great until you're like, oh yeah, but it's all like with an emphasis on Japanese supremacy.
You better be Japanese, essentially. Or at least be and then there's the comfort women. Look, this is all like immensely complicated, and that's why Blank Check is going to go all in on it. 6-part miniseries. No. I mean, read much more about this at your own leisure.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying to our listeners.
It's complicated in so far as I do think that there is like debate or whatever about the fact that, you do build all these schools and whatever that do eventually after Japan leaves, like they're still there, and they can be, actually controlled by Korean people. But yeah, I mean, it was not good.
No, it was not good, but it's left all these crazy scars that linger in all kinds of ways on the country and the culture, right? And on like ongoing relations.
And there's really not much of that we see. We don't really see we don't really see much of the wider world beyond the house in the film, except for like at the beginning and then near the end, once they're kind of on their little honeymoon and the mental hospital and all that. But like, I think there's one point that I always remember from this that is sort of a little splash of cold water on everything, where you kind of do remember the context of what's going on, which is when they're on a boat. When is that? Is it? It's after the wedding, I think.
It's when the Count is on the boat with
Hideko.
Lady Hideko.
Yeah, it's their sort of honeymoon.
And you see
trip.
the men in the uniforms.
They're taking the boat to Japan, and then the Japanese soldiers come and like surround them, and you realize like, oh yeah, this is the context of what's going on. Those men have been fucking raping women for the last year or whatever they were there, and they're now like surrounding Hideko, and she's just obviously like incredibly uncomfortable about it. And it's such a good, like, if you're going to be very selective about historical political stuff, like that is such a good moment, I think, to distill everything.
I kept thinking while watching this movie of the thing George Lucas always said that like his grandest ambition with Star Wars was that when he was in film school and got really into Kurosawa, that he was obsessed with the fact that those movies were meant for Japanese audiences, so they didn't do any sort of like cultural context setting for the audience.
Right.
And that he as a Westerner was watching these films like just dropped into this universe where he had to discern what the rules of culture were through their behavior. And I think this movie, because basically the specific situation it devises is such a microcosm of this entire cultural moment of this house that is like at odds with itself, you're able to extrapolate so much more, even if you're not coming into it with any historical perspective of like, well, here's the whole thing basically contained within 10 characters in a contained space.
Yeah. And I think, there are some sort of comps that you can look to if you're not familiar with the specifics of this time period. But I think that the issue of, like the uncle being the sort of like traitor basically, and also just kind of trying to disavow his Koreanness,
his Koreanness
and
this, through
this
Japanese, essentially.
This sort of fetishization of his, of this, occupying force is so specific that it's really hard to think of like, I mean, you could think of people trying to deny their own culture or, being ashamed of it for whatever reason, but there's something about it in this setting that I just think is so, it's very specific.
I'm curious about how it even works in the original text.
It's not. Yeah,
it's not part of the original novel. You can imagine a sort of
class obsession.
But it takes
like
place
a
during
new
like
money,
peak,
old money thing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it takes place during like peak British colonialism. You're like, it could, because I was wondering before I had read anything about the book, I was like, is that an element of it? Because this is so much about colonialism, and
sure,
it's not. But yeah.
No, I mean, but the thing then is obviously, there are the people trying to act like aristocrats,
faking
and
wealth,
there are people who are like, we are aristocrats. We've been aristocrats for 1,000 years. You can't fucking fake
it. Right. It's the old money, new money thing. But there's this added element of what you're saying, where it's like, it's not even cultural exotism. It's like the jealousy of the culture he was not born into.
Yeah. Or, I mean, in a very, very simplistic version, it's like, you're being bullied, and so you try to emulate your bully.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
I mean, he's also a dirty collaborator who got a gold mine in exchange for helping the Japanese take over
that's
Korea.
Why he's got
I want to be clear. I think this guy sucks.
You think?
And he's calling right now.
Okay, he's calling. He's blowing up our phone.
What do we say?
Fuck. Let's word
something
this
very neutral, like, what's up, dude?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
How's tricks?
House tricks. Yeah.
Right. We don't want to appear to be too friendly, but we also don't want to put him on edge.
I don't want to be on record saying anything, that in approval of anything he's been up to.
I don't want to condone anything he stands for, but I also don't think there's any reason to be rude for the sake of
To
being
be fair,
rude.
I think it would be hard for me to do that, but
Sure.
Nice house? No,
Yes.
no.
Yeah. Because that's more of a compliment to the interior decorator than it is to him.
Right. But he did commission, isn't it that he commissioned it? Or was it that it was two houses that were conjoined? Or was it, I think it was, no, because they were talking about the architect, like, did this specifically for him, like,
Right.
including
It's
the,
an insane thing he
border.
created, because
Yeah,
the idea,
yeah.
of course, of the trees around it is they will keep the sun from, hurting his precious books,
Yeah.
because he's a collector of books,
Yeah.
especially dirty porn.
Yeah, no, these books suck ass. They're
Hey.
bad.
I don't know. Some of them are kind of
No
cool.
kink shaming in this house.
Yeah, exactly. But he's definitely got a bit of a weird
I
mindset
think we're allowed
about
to kink
them.
shame this guy, at least for the way
guy,
he expresses.
sure.
Wait,
Yeah.
okay. Before we get into the porn,
Yeah,
you want to
the
hear
porn
something
comes
fucked
later,
up
really.
that I read when
Please,
I was
what's up?
trying to find some background stuff about this? That include, like, along with the colonization and the neocultural takeover and everything, the Japanese introduced, like, cut down Korean trees and replaced them with Japanese species of trees that were actually, like, I don't know about invasive, but like really
but, like,
threw
did not
off
belong right
the
in the
ecosystem.
ecosystem, right?
I
That's
just
not
was reminded
cool.
that
No,
when
it
you were
sucks.
talking about the trees, and I was like, yeah, it was so, like, that just, it's like so total, and so, like, that just feels like an insult on top of injury. It's so dumb, but anyway.
This dude's obsessed with books, and he's in this weird position where I always get a little confused trying to parse this, but he's basically bankrupted himself on his book collection.
Yeah, he's an idiot who doesn't know what he's doing. He's using his gold mine money, which he
Right.
barely, earned
Yes. He didn't earn it. He has
on
it.
all this insanity.
Yes.
I mean, barely. Like, it's like he doesn't know how to run a gold mine. Probably he's
No,
just
no.
he's using all the money from that to build this crazy house and buy all these books. He now
truly
is
like a dirty book addiction that now he is funding by forging books and
Right.
selling
the forgeries.
forged copies of the books he owns to buy more books.
Can you imagine, like, the Japanese general or whoever who made this deal with him to give him the gold mine, and they, like, check in on him 20 years later? It's like, I wonder what that guy got up to. Like, what did he make of himself? We gave him that gold.
I'm in my octopus basement. Don't talk to me. He has now Hideko is his niece, obviously, right? And
Yes.
Because he
she
married a Japanese
Right.
woman.
and the fortune lies with her, and he is sort of raising her to eventually marry her so that he can get the fortune all to himself. Correct?
Right.
Normal,
She's raised by
normal
her
stuff.
raised
Yeah,
by her
that's right.
aunt, marries this horrible man.
Right.
He basically
Drives her aunt to insanity and kills her.
Yes. What is presented to her as a suicide,
Suicide
but
was
she
actually
realizes
murder.
was a murder.
And then he's like, "It's no problem. You slot right into that position, and when you come of age, I will marry you."
Right.
And meanwhile, like, we'll do all kinds of horrible things. And so he's sort of like a C plus, D minus, kind of person.
I give him
right?
an F. I think he's
And-
actually about as
Like-
bad as people get.
Like
Okay.
a 5.5.
Right. Yeah. He's like
Yeah.
a pitchford 5.5.
Great,
Maybe that's the
great,
most damning
great
thing
eyebrows.
you could say about him is he's very mid.
He's super mid. So
Can I talk about the
does your
eyebrows for a
hat say
second?
PG-13?
Yeah, it does. It's
Cool.
a great rating. It's a decision I love in this movie so much for a film that is so twisty, right? The actor playing this character is about 40 years old, I think, at the time of filming this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The uncle.
The uncle.
Yeah.
And they just give him big old man eyebrows.
Yeah.
Stark white Doc Brown wig. And don't even really like put prosthetic wrinkles on his face. It's more like
He just looks
theatrical
like shit.
stage makeup.
Yeah.
Like, he
And it's-
doesn't look that much more convincing than Hideko
No.
does at the end of the film.
No.
When
And it
she's in
feels
drag.
right. It feels very like Archers to me.
the
Yeah.
filmmakers, yes.
Right, where it's this owning of like theatrical communication of visual ideas, that this film can exist in a heightened reality with like very honest, complicated human emotions, things like sexuality that didn't exist in this sort of heightened, more theatrical, like pre-method era of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
But you just accept this is a fucking old guy. Because I'm watching it and I'm like, is this going to be part of the twist that he's a young guy pretending to be an old guy or whatever? You're like, no, you just cast
another
young
evil
actor.
and weird thing, and inexplicably, I want to be old.
Yes.
I also just think like the first time we see him, which actually takes a bit of time because you know,
Is with the snake?
no, she can. Yeah.
Right.
The first time we see the library and all of that. I mean, there's a zoom in on him as he's like licking his pen or whatever, and it is so alarming. And so, I mean, I remember I looked at my old review for this, which is not. Don't read it. Maybe I don't know. I hate my writing and all of it.
Hey, you're on the great film.
But
Yes,
I did
actually,
write down
truly.
Looney Tunes a bunch, which in general I think is like I think of Looney Tunes all the time when I'm watching Park, but yeah, that is one of those moments where you're just like, whoa, where'd that guy come from? Okay, he's a character in this movie.
Well,
Yes, and it's like a different visual language than any of the character we've seen. Like, here comes a guy who feels like he's out of a Tim Burton movie.
So I want to talk about that moment because as a way of talking about the sort of first chunk of
You
this
know
movie,
what it reminds me of? Sorry. It reminds me of the bear in The Shining. Like
Bear in The
that
Shining,
shot.
Yes,
Yeah,
the big
that-
zoom.
And you're just like, oh my God,
Absolutely.
something incredibly perverted is happening here. And
you're- Right. You're going into this movie. You get this setup of, okay, that's the situation over there, uncle, niece, money.
Yeah.
In comes the count, a con artist who's like, I have gotten inside of this and I'm going to marry the niece, right?
Yes.
And he's like, I need a lady from your Fagin-esque den of thieves
Right.
of, baby farming and female pickpockets
Yes.
to come and pretend to be a handmaiden to part of my scheme.
Yeah.
So if you're just watching this movie and you're like, all of this is normal, there are no twists coming.
I get it.
That's what you think the con is, correct?
Right.
You're watching the movie, you're with the handmaiden, she's your point of view character.
Yes.
She's getting to know the mistress, she has nightmares, right? She's, getting to know the lay of the land, the other maids are mean,
Right.
steal her shoe,
Yes.
all this stuff. She goes down to the basement, crash zoom into the count. Him being like, there's a snake. There's a fucking snake.
Right.
Right. And they're like, get out. They draw the bars. And so you're like, okay, so is this movie about they just thought they were going to steal some stuff and get one over on a lady?
The twist is clearly going to have to do with what is this guy's fucking deal.
And the twist is actually you don't understand all the crazy shit that's happening in here. Now, of course, the layers of twists are, no, actually, there's a lot of awareness of what's going on.
Right.
But that alone is such a nerve jangling.
Yes.
Things are not what they seem.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out moment.
But I agree
It's
with
the
you.
first moment of true excitement.
That bear moment in Shining, it's a similar thing where you're like in a film that's setting up an incredibly bizarre reality, and then fairly deep in, it suddenly shifts the language of its own reality to something that feels more expansive than what you thought before. And it's like, I think it is important that the guy is doing
Crazy
such.
looking. Also, he looks insane. Like
He looks amazing. He looks insane, but it's also like a very heightened, unrealistic performance, which isn't to say that it's not a good performance, but it's like an entirely different pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it goes from this thing, it feels like, whatever, it feels like kind of Hitchcock, feels kind of Rebecca. You're like, oh, a spooky house, like somebody died, there's women's madness is haunting this house. And then you get to that and it just ups it to, something more both concrete and fantastical. And it's just the editing of that. Like, you see the room, you pan down this insane room with like this, what's going on here? There's a library and then there's like a tatami room at the end of it. You see him, you see how insane he looks. And then there's a fucking snake and then the gate and all this shit. And it's just like bam, 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 bam. And you have to be like, it's purposefully just completely overwhelming and disorienting, and it's such a good moment.
And you've already set up this thing of like literacy being a big thing in the movie from almost the beginning, right? And then this idea of like she keeps on going with her uncle to have these like reading lessons, to do these like practice readings and performances. And that's the thing.
It's lessons.
For so much of the movie, it's like, yeah, whatever. She goes down,
she has her lessons, sure. Yeah.
Right. And then it's pretty deep in that she starts to say, like, you don't understand how stressful this is. And you're like, what's the weird thing going on here? What can I comprehend about what's going on here? But it is a little bit of it's not a distraction because there are like reveals to come from that. But you're like, no, but he's keeping your eye off the ball of every scene you've seen is actually taking place in a different plane of reality than you think.
Yeah.
Because obviously the fundamental thing about this movie is that the male characters, the men, if you will,
suck.
They cannot account for the women around them having intellectual capacity or like, any kind of smarts.
But at the same time, they are like completely motivated by self-loathing, whether it's about class or nationality. I mean, like both of the main men in this are
well-adjusted
Korean.
And normal. Well said. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No, go ahead.
They're Korean men.
They're both Korean.
Who you can forget sometimes because, as you said, Uncle never speaks Korean until the very end. And the quote-unquote count is, which, also, like, his name, Count Fujiwara, like, it's kind of fun. It's, like, very... Like, you can't believe anybody would actually fall for this just because Fujiwara is, like, one of the oldest, like, they had, like, the most noble family from, like,
right. It's like if I called myself Lord Windsor or whatever.
Yeah. You're like, oh, wow,
Mr.
he must
Rothschild.
be really important.
Right.
Right.
It's just funny. It's like, oh, yeah, this guy who's this, he's a working class, whatever, he's trying to, jump up in social status. And he's like, I pick that name. And... It's great.
He's grand old moneybags. That's what his name is. Rich Uncle Pennybags. Yeah.
They're like obsessed with creating these false sort of personas for themselves of the types of men they wish they were and how they were perceived within cultures, right? And which cultures they wish they were in. But then their other obsession is like looking at women and trying to shape them into the women of fictional works.
Yes. Yeah. The women are just right. I mean, there's literally a wooden puppet in this movie, obviously. Right. And all of their sexual desires are about control and such like that. But also they just can't actually think that these women might be up to anything.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
But then also the women can't account for each other's naivete, and we can't account for their naivete at first. Like, we're getting the veils lifted for us over and over and over again.
Yes.
And with each veil lifted, you're like, right, of course. And the men, of course, are the last to figure it out, and they only figure it out when they're smoking poison together in a basement with no windows at the end. And they're like,
I say it? Both of these guys.
Like, but at least I have my penis. Sorry.
Dare I say it? Both of these guys, Uncle especially, they're down bad with a horrible case of the Don John, where they're so obsessed with what they see women do in porn.
No,
David
I
is
know. They got
standing
porn
up, he's
brain.
walking away. Right, they got porn brain, and they're just like, why don't you act like the women in the porn I watch?
Yeah.
Or in this case, the porn I read on fancy scrolls and
lick my fingers.
Lovely woodcuts and so on and so forth.
But even it's not even why don't you act like this? It's I demand I shape you into this.
Yeah. It's the irony of it, of this, you have this Japanese colonizing force, and then the lone actual Japanese person in this house is the one who has sort of been molded into this role and set up as this object, basically, to watch and to like get your rocks off about without ever touching her, really. There's no, as far as we can tell, there's no actual,
she's unspoiled technically or whatever.
Sure, yeah, but yes, I mean, but there's no, he's not touching her. He's not being, there's no assault or anything like that. She is, but that, like, there doesn't need to be for him. There's something about this whole kink of his that is so much about having this unattainable object, basically, that he's created himself. And it's very...
Which he even says to the other rich guys of just like, there is no amount you could pay.
Yeah.
To be with her.
Yeah.
Like, it is just like aggressive objectification that is also trying...
hitting her, aren't they?
What, physical? Well, there's
there's like the lash. Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
But yes, they're not having sex with her.
No, and the hitting her is also like part of this weird
and then
power
she's hitting them sometimes.
Fantasy of just like, well, you're watching this very proper sort of like quote unquote pure, unspoiled young woman recount the most like perverse shit to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the only
And
physical
they sit
contact
in tuxedos and twirl their mustaches.
Right. And then the only physical contact you're allowed to make is like essentially physically punishing her for misbehaving, right? It's like if they were to then have sex with her, it would make her dirty versus her describing the dirty thing to them and then them like she is a child, like spanking her bottom and be like, you use bad language.
But I think the more interesting thing is them, her, you know, whipping his ass. Because then you have this, I think that is the more... I think that, you know, you can kind of do the, you can whip her bottom for $100 or whatever. But then it's like the real thing is to have this, again, like perfect woman, this unattainable woman that you've basically trained to torment you psychologically and physically in this one scene. Like that this is some sort of literal self-flagellation that you are enacting through this woman. The
highest level is punishing yourself by allowing her to hit you for wanting to fuck her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when you add on all the political and cultural baggage on it, it's just, I mean, it's just like a steak to me.
Gumbo.
I'm just like, this is so interesting. And the first time I watched it, I was like, well, this is before everybody also got all into erotic thrillers and stuff like that again. And I remember thinking while I was watching, I was like, this isn't an erotic thriller. Like, this is exactly like the kind of movie that we've like been missing for forever and ever, and that nobody really, you know, certainly makes in English language.
Epic, like, and it is, you know, I mean, what I think what we all love and miss about the cheap 80s and 90s erotic thrillers is sometimes you could just have a movie that was like, what if a guy and a girl like fucked when they shouldn't have?
Yes.
Right. You know, like what they could be real nothing.
Right.
This is a beautiful film. Mm-hmm. It's an incredibly complicated series of dynamics.
Yeah.
You're just talking about one element of the film right now. Like there, you know,
well,
like
I mean, I think the one that I was thinking of was just basic instinct because of the element of queerness, because of, you know, the sort of incredibly tenuous relationship between a man who thinks he has this woman, you know, under his thumb, and then, you know, constantly being, it's very complicated.
Playing roles, which is a big thing I think that comes up in most of Park's films, is like sort of the, how am I supposed to behave, or what do I want to convince other people I am, versus who am I really, you know, if I even am able to answer that.
Yeah.
All right, Griffin, I know you love to hear about these guys, so I just want to remind you that summer is better with Bombas. Their thoughtfully designed clothes make you feel effortlessly at ease, from breezy, tagless tees to second skin soft underwear to perfectly cushioned, sweat-wicking socks. Those are the number 1, 2, and 3 most requested items in homeless shelters: socks, underwear, t-shirts. That's why for every comfy item you purchase, Bombas donates another comfy item to someone in need. Look, Bombas makes thoughtfully designed better basics to keep you feeling your best all season long, on the trail, in the park, your own backyard. It's all seamless. It's all tagless. It's all effortlessly soft. They've got these no-show socks with breathable yarns for a barely there feel. They've got silicone grips and a contoured design so you don't slip around. I wear Bombas socks essentially every day. I like the sweat-wicking ones that keep your feet cool and comfortable. I wear Bombas underwear pretty much every day. I got some Bombas shirts. I got a lot of Bombas in my life, and I really like that so far Bombas has donated over 100 million items, and each purchase that you make adds to that impact. And Griffin, I know you want to say this, but I'm going to cut you off and interrupt you and remind everyone that Bombas is also one of the most successful projects in Shark Tank history. Look, go to bombas.com/check and use code check for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/check and use code check at checkout. Bombas.com/check, code check.
The additional layer, one of the many additional layers on top of this that's so fascinating, is like, as she presents to us at first, it's like, well, this is someone who is so beyond sheltered that she is basically like stuck in a permanent state of like mental adolescence, right?
Yeah.
Like she has just been so cloistered off from the world. She is so out of touch with her own sexuality. The Count is trying to like tell the handmaiden that her job is to like quietly try to like sexually mature her.
Right.
because she's not even in a state where she
Right.
could be
She
seduced
needs to
into
warm her
him
up.
marrying her.
Right.
Right. So there's that whole thing. But then you find out, in fact, and then when you get to the reveal of what's going on in the basement, the library, whatever, you're like, okay, so it's her sexuality has been taken away from her because she is forced to perform it for these other guys, so she has no sense of her own sexuality. And then you realize, no, her not having a sense of her own sexuality is the performance to the world. Well,
I don't think she does. Like, I do. This is one of the things I think it doesn't make this film not work for me. I just think it's like I feel like I have a different read on it, which is just that, like, I think in many ways she's still an innocent, and I think that if you're meant to think, oh, she's this, saucy minx because she reads erotica to these men, what I take away from it is that you can read filth and porn every day of your life for the benefit of somebody else and get in all these weird sex positions with a mannequin on stage and stuff and still not have a sense of what you want. You can be exposed to sex all that a person could be and still, when she realizes that she is in love with Tucc, it's like it still feels like a revelation, and there's something about it that feels young because of that, because she hasn't actually done anything that she wants to do.
But the scene where the Count comes to her and says, like, let me flip over my cards. My plan was to seduce you and then, like, send you to an insane asylum. But I realize now I can never seduce you because you're not interested in men, basically, right?
Yeah.
A lot of movies would make that some, like, realization that comes to her later only through falling in love. For real, of like, I never had a chance to even understand or consider my own sexuality because my sexuality has been like foisted upon me. Whereas instead, even if it maybe hasn't been expressed, it's very clear in that moment that she has some clear sense of, at the very least, what her sexuality is not and what it is that has not been given a chance to express itself.
Also, like, how could you not be repulsed by all of that if that was what you were getting from, like, age 6 or whatever? It's like...
Sure, it's probably not going to leave you with the healthiest opinion of
right, but I think there's not a sense of searching in her, and I think what's so interesting about the second time you see the first scene where they sleep together, when you understand that this was one of her moves, that it was her objective to seduce Tucc, that I think that is the moment where they fall in love with each other.
Of course.
That, like, it is, they're both attracted
like,
to each other and interested.
This is good.
Compelled.
This is fun. Like, this isn't just performance or whatever.
That's the thing.
This is natural.
It's so clear both times where it's right. She keeps on saying you were natural, but the thing is just like, oh, this is, you said it better. I was just going to rephrase everything you just said.
Do you think this character should have one good male character? This film should have one good male character who's kind of like, I'm nice. I'm a cool guy.
You know what? I just hate the idea of little boys watching this movie and not having any character to look up to.
Now listen.
There are no positive male role models in this film. I just want little boys to be able to see themselves on screen.
They're just not relatable.
No.
We've kind of skipped over the first part of the movie, but the first part of the movie is not really worth the discussion after you've seen the movie.
You set it up.
I mean,
quick.
other
Exactly.
than the,
Right.
I mean, but plot wise, sure. But I
table
think
set.
like when you, I think stuff like those pivotal moments, like the reveal of the uncle,
Yes.
like the first sex scene. One thing I really
time
like.
you see the sex scene, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I one thing I did like is that so Hideko speaks in Korean, which it might just be for the benefit of the main intended audience for the movie, but also like it does seem like she does want to separate herself from her Japaneseness just because of the way, like almost in rebellion to the way her uncle fetishizes it.
She doesn't want to be the puppet her uncle is turning her into. Right.
Yeah, but then so all of their scenes together are in Korean, but when they are in that first sex scene, when she's like supposedly like, show me what a man wants on his wedding night, which is like, I just think it's so
it's
cute.
in a lot of the literature I've written about various fictional characters I'm interested in, exploring in more depth.
Blank check press.
Sure. But the one like she does slip into Japanese just to say this is what the Count would say, which I just think is so that is and it's like literally when she's about to go down on her, and that's when she switches into Japanese, which I just feel like I just think it's like a very interesting choice because suddenly there is going to be this like girl sex act, and it's kind of couched in this language, and still like the presence or influence of this man. So it feels like kind of it is like a means to get to having sex, but I just think it's really interesting.
Well, look, to lay it out as cleanly as possible, right? Like fake Count who's hired to help forge the books for this guy who drove himself into debt with the book collection. But you get to the point where they have this sex scene. They clearly make the stronger connection.
Sure.
And then...
but you still think this is all just part of a game.
But Tucc starts to feel conflicted about, I don't know if I can put her up to this.
Right.
And then there's the sort of test where Hideko asks her, like, if you weren't truly in love with someone, would you still recommend that I go marry someone else?
Or if I was in love with someone.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Yes.
And there's sort of like this big test where you just think it's the offense of her not fighting for her love.
Right.
After a couple scenes of like Suki is like trying to interfere with the Count making moves on her, but she keeps on jumping in, and he's trying to stop her from ruining the whole fucking gambit.
Right.
And then when she thinks it is finally the move where they are going to get her committed to the institution,
of course.
In fact, everything is flipped on her.
Right.
They make them think that
Suki is the lady, and
with
that
a delusion
she is
of being a
gone.
handmaiden.
Dottie.
The thing you can that tips you off to the switcheroo, and I to be fair, I only noticed this the second time around, but I did think it was weird the first time I saw it, that like when they're on their honeymoon in Japan, they're dressing up Suki like not like a Japanese maid, she's wearing like a kimono, she's wearing like a nice outfit, and then when they take her to the insane asylum or the sanitarium or whatever, she's there, talking about the Countess, and clearly meant to be set up to sound delusional, and she's wearing this costume, and they're like, she thinks she's Japanese. It's so weird and sad. Like
they take her on their honeymoon, like they sort of like force her into this psychological throuple, knowing that she'll feel like she's the stronger emotional part of this.
But if she didn't, so Suki actually knows what's going on, which is the later twist, right?
Yeah.
If she didn't, she would seem so stupid here. Because it would be weird if you knew, like, the plan is to put her in the asylum. Can you put her clothes on for 1 sec? Yeah. Can you just dress like the Countess, though? We're just trying something out.
She doesn't know what's going on until late.
No, she knows what's going on.
No, she does. Like when we go,
when they
the
flee,
final flip, though.
she knows that she's going to be committed.
They know what's
on
she knows
day.
what's going
Yes,
on before they.
No, she knows way before
they leave.
Yeah.
When they escape the house.
Okay, so my favorite scene in the movie,
the hanging,
is the hanging on when she hangs herself in the tree.
My question is just when that happens in the timeline.
Well, but it's not. They haven't eloped.
It's right.
Before.
No, that happens right before they elope.
You're right. Because it's after they have the conversation on the eve of them getting right. I'm sorry,
but the hanging we don't see until the second part. We do
not
see
see
it
until the second part. So obviously,
you see the tree and the noose. You don't see her
after this flip. Right. We run it back, and now we see everything through Hideko's
because the incredible line
at
the end of part 1 is, I've always said she's a rancid bitch or whatever.
She's a nasty little bitch or whatever she says.
And then we cut to baby
but I do want to go back just I mean, because just plot, but I want to talk about filmmaking, you guys.
Do it.
I want to talk about the running away scene, because I just think that there is it's a cool, and you can't really talk about it with talking about the second time it happens, but when it goes into them leaving the house and going to meet the Count, in the boat and whatever, it goes to this sort of crescendo. The music swells in a way that it has not up until this point. And it's very exciting because, they're running away. And in the first part of it, we know that this is going to be very pivotal. Like the whole plot is coming together and all of that. But it does feel like, whoa. Suddenly this is a lot of movie. Like suddenly this is very operatic. I mean, and yes, the movie has been very big up until this point, but not in this sort of like period movie, like swell of two women running across a field and and all of
the
that.
Colors popping.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I saw the film, in that scene just being like, this is okay. It was different. I guess it was about the time where I was like, this is going to be one of my favorite movies ever. But that scene also was just so, I was just like, this is the most entertained I've been in so long. Like, this is just so, it's such a movie. It's so great. And then when you see it the second time and they're making their escape, and this time we've seen the hanging and know that now they're in on this plot together. They are really in love, and they're both, consciously in love with each other, and they are going about this switcheroo on the count intentionally. Then you're like, oh my God, that's why it felt so big the first time. I just didn't have the whole picture. But their performances in that scene are so ecstatic, which feels not quite earned yet when it's the first time
one of them should be plotting to commit the other one to both of them think they're plotting to commit the other
and but then when you see it the second time, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like
I remember in a coward's move, I like that this year when we did our Blankie Award episode, I gave a special commendation to both of them instead of nominating either one because I couldn't decide which one to put in. I didn't put both of them in.
Lily-livered.
Truly. And I think part of it too is like I maybe saw the movie twice that year when it came out and then watched it twice again recently. But it's like scene to scene and certainly like act to act, you change your estimation of which performance is more skillful and complicated. You know?
Yeah.
Yes. They're perfectly matched too.
They are.
So. Yeah.
But sometimes you're just sort of like, well, this is the more complicated one. Not that they're not like totally in tandem.
Well Kim Turi is so natural and charismatic and pretty and
she
bubbly.
Reads, everything is on her face. Right. And there is a part
and then Kim and
where
is like,
in the second part,
painting.
Yeah, there's a part in the second section where, that Hiroko's narrating and is like, why is she so like readable? Why she's not trying to hide any of this.
She's not doing a good job.
She's stomping around and being mad when we're out on our little painting walk. Like, why can't she just be cool? But then that's ultimately the thing that's attractive about her is that there isn't all this, ulterior motive and people hiding behind all these different layers of
and there's the scene where she grabs her by the cheeks and says like your mother was happy to have, that's very like naked and emotional and like genuine.
And she's like, how come a man has never been like this around me?
I don't know. Again, why aren't there positive male characters in this movie? Writing at parkchenwook@gmail.com.
And if you're just a little boy watching this, who are you supposed to want to be? Kylo Ren?
I mean, if you're a little boy watching this movie, you're doing great.
You're doing great.
Little boys should definitely
you're off
be
to a
watching
great start.
Handmaiden.
Can I read a part quote I really like here from a film comment interview when this movie came out? He said, everything that I want to say with this film is probably in the one scene where the women are jumping over the stone wall and notice how low the wall is. Had she ever wished Lady Hideko could have always jumped over that wall, but the deep-rooted emotional trauma inside her was holding her back. And then this person, Tucc, enters her life and she's able to find love. And through that love, Hideko gains bravery that allows her to jump over that wall in a single breath towards freedom.
She also builds a little stairs with the suitcases. So she does need her help, but it is still like they can do it together and it's no problem.
No, and so much of it's a matter of perspective about things feeling insurmountable.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're seeing things from Hideko, my favorite scene is when she tries to hang herself.
Yes.
So, but we see from her perspective, yes, as we've all been discussing, that she is far more self-aware than the
conversation of, would you tell me to marry someone if I was in love with someone else? And before you think she's just hurt because she's in love, and now you find out that this is the ultimate test of, I know she's trying to con me.
Right.
Does she care more about the money?
Yeah.
Right.
Can we break this ruse together?
Right. So then she goes from that into despondency, hanging herself. You see her drop off the branch, and then she doesn't fall all the way. She has an odd reaction, and then it cuts out to the wider shot, and Suki's holding her by the legs.
It's so funny.
Weeping.
It's so
the
good.
Immediate, because you feel so hurt watching that scene the first time.
Sure.
The second time, it's like beyond painful.
Yeah, it's like a gut punch. Yeah.
Right. And you're just like, I don't want her to do something this awful. And then the fact that she can't go more than 5 minutes without coming in and saying, like, I need to tell you everything.
But yes. But just the physical comedy of her holding her.
Yes.
And her being like, I'm conning you. Like, And then Hideko being like, you don't understand. I'm also, we're going to put you in this scene.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Suki drops. She's like, God damn it, you fucking asshole. And then it's like,
She's
sorry.
hanging
And has to like pick her back up.
Because to like the widest shot, you just see her like squirming and scrambling. As Suki's just sort of like pouting around, stomping her feet.
It makes me laugh so much in what is like the critical, dramatic turnaround of the film.
But it's that balance of tones that's just like that thing that he gets at. I don't know. It's once again, I just weirdly kept on thinking of Colonel Blimp while watching this movie.
I get that.
And I think part of it is like the vividness of like the colors and the sets and like
Right.
owning the
Colonel
artifice
Blimp had that basement
of the movie.
with
Yes.
the octopus.
He's got that weird basement and the younger people playing older people and all this sort of stuff. But I also think it is that thing where like you watch those Powell and Pressburger movies, which you and I agree, you watch them and you're like, these are like the best movies ever made. And part of it is that like they just owned, it was like everything that a movie could be.
Yes.
And every single tone you could put into a movie. And just having like epic emotions and stakes and set pieces and comedy and danger.
Just
and
maximizing
it's just like,
every element.
everything.
The sound, oh my God, the sound in this movie. This is another thing I was going to talk about. Like, and this really, you start to really notice it in that undressing scene when they're, and which goes on for a long time, where they're talking and, you know, taking turns undressing one another. And it's not sexy yet intentionally, but it is just because we are hearing like every fiber on the laces of the corset coming off. We're hearing the earrings like clack in this very, very noticeable, very like tactile. It's almost like ASMR.
Yes.
And all these and when she's dressing her for the first time, and there's the whole thing about the ladies or the dolls of the maidens or whatever, like, you know, that all this is for my pleasure. As she buttons up, you know, every single little button, and we hear this, just the sound of the Foley is so amazing. And
the tooth filing, and then this movie. Has
the tooth filing, yeah. We
movie
skipped over the tooth filing entirely.
There's the tooth filing. The initial comedy of she puts on the bra and she's like, God, this is like restrictive, and she's like, you think that's restrictive? And then you cut to the middle of her just going like, you know, pulling the corset, and she's like, you know, like rather than doing that in a gentle and sexy way.
But he does have that thing. He is such a sensual filmmaker in that you can like hear the difference in textures.
Yeah.
In any scene and whatever's happening. And then I'm just gonna say it. This movie has like the best sex Foley work.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh sure, right. The best sort of squishing.
There's a lot of squishing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's a good sounding movie.
It's just a thing that most people stay far away from. Like they're like, I'm gonna put the soft music in over this and just completely remove that element out of sex.
Well, this might be a good time to talk about the sex scenes in general, because this was kind of the one sort of controversial element, I think, about it at the time it came out. Wait, what? Sorry.
There was some discourse.
There's some discourse over the sex scenes in this, and I remember
they did a discourse.
Being a little ambivalent one way or the other. I could see the points of criticism, and I think every time I've watched it since then, I'm more and more like, no, every decision in this movie was correct. But
100%.
But yeah, I mean, I think, but there was an argument to be made that the sex was sort of male gazy and very, you know, intentionally framed and very, you know, have all these full body shots. And actually, like, this is what a lot of people said about Blue is the Warmest Color when it came out. And I think that film is guilty of that. I did not like the sex scenes in that movie, but I think that there is, because of the context of the story, because of how much of this plot is about porn and erotica, and like the like, you know, the Shunga prints and stuff, that the framing becomes kind of an echo of that they are reclaiming. in a
Yes,
way.
yeah, and I think also, as you said, David, you need to see the acts to see the difference in their behavior and their emotions, in that they are not performing and they are forming this meaningful connection.
Well, the first time it feels that it's shown to us in a more limited way.
Right.
And you're still like inside of a con. And then
it starts out as role playing with both of them conning each other. Right.
And then the second time it's like this dance sequence that's like beautifully choreographed.
It's choreographed.
And it's like you're watching two dancers who are so good at dancing together, which is obviously not, something you can automatically be good at, right? Like they're naturals, like they keep saying, for each other.
But like, not to get too horny on Maine, but it is that thing of like,
are you gonna bring up Alfalfa again?
Yeah. This guy fucks. Alfalfa is an absolute poon hound.
You can get as horny on Maine as you like.
Let me cut all of that out.
Nope.
Here's what I was gonna say. It is that thing that is like hard to define or talk about, but when people look for like sexual compatibility in relationships, I think it is what this film depicts very well, which is two people basically finding a way to communicate non-verbally.
Right. Well, when I have sex, it looks like this.
Absolutely. Same. I've never had sex that doesn't look like this. But it's that feeling of like in a movie where, and Park talked about this, this is a talkier movie than most of his films. This has significantly more dialogue than most of his films, which is why it's important in movies where he is going much longer, having characters express themselves primarily through gestures, through looks, through actions. This is a movie where people are talking around each other, but constantly lying, right? Under like 3 different layers of performance.
Right.
To have this moment where suddenly like they're both conning each other. On top of that, they're playing a role-playing game of pretending they're, at least one of them is a different person in this sexual encounter. And then when that falls away, and especially the second time when you revisit the sex scene again, and it's like, oh no, this is the moment where suddenly they are communicating things to each other that cannot be communicated through words. It's that thing David Fincher always says where he's like, my big read is that people use words to lie. I think most dialogue isn't about people expressing themselves if a script is good. It's about people using words to trick each other.
Wow, what a cool guy. Maybe
the role that language plays in this, not just the Japanese and the Korean, but the fact that learning to read has this power that is mostly shown as being used for violence. Right. And that there's this library that is like this like gate. It's like this prison. For her, like you literally have to walk through it, and there is an actual physical gate and stuff in order, that she has to go through that in order to escape. And then they have to destroy this collection, in order to escape, which is But you're bookmarking that for a second, but that that all of this has been used as a means to trap this woman essentially, and that in a way though it is not enough just to get away from it, to establish a life and a world and a sexuality outside of it. But in a way, you have to almost incorporate. It's like you have to take a little bit of the poison in with it in order to make it your own. And like their passion is real, their love is real. We believe in it. We believe in it the first time through. Like I mean, I think that her actually falling in love with Hideko is, yes, you're kind of like, oh, come on, you idiot. Like, why are you doing this? You're going to ruin the whole thing. But it's because it is, like, it feels real. Yes, she's still trying to con her, but the love is real there.
Well, you're also, like, initially, like, well, you're not going to get away with it.
Right,
together.
This is not going to work out for you.
It's impossible.
But yeah, we believe that. But, and I think the first scene with them when, they first, there's the kind of first seduction, like when they're talking about what the Count would want, that is much more conventionally shot, I think, as a love scene, minus the vagina cam at the very end.
The POV, but the P means something different.
Yeah, and the V means something different.
But yeah, then after that though, there is this really kind of almost self-aware staging of the sex scenes, which is, to me, just feels like, okay, we are submerged in this world of this like purposely structured for men's pleasure kind of erotica and porn and all of that, and we're going to make our own version of that. And it's not the structure of it that is bad or that's harmful to us. It's the point of view, and we are going to reclaim this for our own, our own pleasure and satisfaction as two women, and do it outside of the power of these men. And that's why I think that the framing of it and the formalization of it and these like symmetrical shots and everything are important. Yeah.
But sex is also like a big part of his movies, but often these sex scenes in his films are the least erotic parts of the film, right? And something like Stoker, the peak of the movie is like them playing piano together, where he's able to come up with this sort of like this act that conveys the feeling of being in tandem with another person, or the anticipation or the thought of it, versus a lot of times I feel like his comedic scenes are a little bit comical, like kind of
his other sex scenes are kind of comical. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, in other films.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in this, it's like it's not the opposite, but it's like he needs them to be.
There is a kind of humor, though, in how unguarded they are in them. Because it has been all these like careful little tiptoes around each other, and the fact that they're just so like helpless in front of each other, that they like are just like, there's no holding back any emotion. It's sort of like, watching somebody eat an entire candy bar in like one bite or something. You're just like, there's something so human and sweet about it. Yeah.
Yes. We don't need to dig in on this, but I'm just curious because I was thinking the same thing about like reading a bunch of the reviews of people at the time questioning whether this scene was male gazy, and I was thinking about Blue is the Warmest Color as a comparison point as well. Am I wrong in my mental timeline that this movie comes out around the time the pieces were coming out?
Probably true.
About the actresses on Blue is the Warmest Color talking about. Because that was a thing where that movie came out, plays a con, everyone was like, you will not believe the intimacy achieved on screen. Steven Spielberg gives both of them the Palme d'Or along with the director. And then within 2 years later, the entire narrative of that movie is different.
Yeah.
And both to do an archipelago, I always get her name wrong. We're sort of like, we didn't feel comfortable. This felt exploitative to us. So it almost felt like when this movie came out and people were raising like questions about the sex scenes, it was this defensive.
Yeah, they're like, we don't want to be fooled again by this shit. Right. In case something really, nasty was happening on set.
I don't know. It felt a little reactive to me in that sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that totally could be an element of it. I mean, now I want to look up if that
is annoying.
I agree. Throw everyone into the sun.
Now,
God, can you imagine though, like if that came out? Like, that came out in 2016. Before
this film came out in 2016.
But it came out, I feel like. Well, when it was at the theatrical? Because I saw it for this.
Like October 2016.
Yeah. Okay, so immediately before everybody lost their goddamn minds. Like
normal.
It was one of the last normal weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the first film I saw at the Alamo Drafthouse.
Oh,
it was like opening week of the Brooklyn Alamo Drafthouse. Don't remember. Burger?
Okay. They didn't have a special handmade menu?
Okay. So part 3 of the film. We should mention, right, part 2 concludes as we see their sort of, their genuine affection and their genuine conspiracy with each other. They go into the basement, into the library.
Right.
And trash it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you look it up, Griffin, it's not helpful, I promise. Yeah.
Well, but the movie came out in 2013. I think it feels about right.
Well, they talked about it as early as 2013. So I don't know that we can put an exact date on it.
I still think this movie being in the wake
think
of
that's
the
what it
reappraisal.
is.
That's
it's
all
just
I'm saying.
Generally, exactly. That movie became this sort of like touch point of like, but they destroy the library. Mm-hmm. They find that movie that the Blue is the Warmest Color guy made about butts. They find it in there. They throw it in the river.
Yeah, they break the Criterion disc in half.
Right.
They're like, remember when they said this was a bare bones release, but a special edition was coming later? And then the special edition never did because the movie got canceled culturally.
Right. All of that happens. But that's a very transcendent moment.
They're like, can we still find the tweet where they said the special edition is coming?
They find Burt Cooper's octopus drawing. They don't like that. That actually does happen.
But they do like Mad Men. They talk about like that really was like a golden age of television.
In retrospect.
Right. We didn't know how good we had it. There's a lot of dialogue in this scene while they're trashing the library, just weighing in on
I wish I hadn't started this bit
pop
rolling.
culture of the 2010s.
So as part 3 begins, we have the Count with Hideko.
Wait, I want to talk. Sorry. I know this podcast is going to be 3 hours long, but I just want to talk about that scene too because I do, and it actually still gives me pause watching it now. just the image of these women basically like doing the opposite of a book burning for a bunch of porn,
destroying high-end fancy stuff,
erotica,
Gentlemen's
prints,
erotica.
all of that.
Yes.
And that rings an alarm in my brain. I
understand. I know exactly what you mean.
like it, and I think that divorced from context, it is something that I feel like could be, I don't know, like misinterpreted or something,
Yes.
especially because
these
you
are
have
the tools of her oppression.
they are the
it
tools
makes
of
sense
her
that she
oppression
wants them destroyed.
specifically.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think it's very specific to the character. And I think
Yes.
and I think the way that you see that bear out in the film is that this film is incredibly filthy and clearly really into sex.
Yes,
and
I do not think this film is shamey.
No.
sex.
But I think that I guess it just. And I one of the things I need to stop doing, especially since I stopped being a film critic, is like thinking too much about what other people will make of a film.
The advice I give to everyone at all times.
Yeah,
Don't worry about
but I mean, I think I
morons.
always have in mind, especially then you're like, you can anticipate a stupid discourse that's going to happen around something.
Right.
But yeah, I think that, the idea of these, two queer women destroying porn as a means of their liberation, it just like that can be so misconstrued. And but I don't think that's what this movie is doing.
If you're watching the movie, I think you understand what's going on.
But I think the other element of it as well is like this is coming right after Hideko explains her childhood to Tucc, basically, like finally unfolds all these things, right?
Yes. He's saying that here's what's actually been going on.
Yes.
And
Suki's
my dirty old
response
uncle.
is sort of like this anger stemming from, I am so upset that there was no one in your life to protect you, right?
Yeah.
It's like she wants to destroy the past that she couldn't prevent.
Yeah.
And the trauma that she couldn't stop her from going through because like here's this person who like had her mother and her aunt taken away and a guardian who then abused her. Where it's just like, how was no one keeping you safe? How was no one caring about you and worrying about your best interest until this moment? It's like there needs to be an outward physical display of like...
Yeah.
But Bert Cooper did watch the scene, and that's why he dies in Mad Men.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's the one thing that she can do to actually prove her, devotion to taking care of her. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Well put.
There's the sequence to begin part 3 between the Count and Hideko. They're in a hotel room full of money. He has this line when they're at dinner that I love, where he's like, I don't even dream of money. I dream of being able to order wine without looking at the price.
Like,
describing the
relatable
difference
king.
between being rich and being wealthy.
Yes.
That's what that is to me. Like, he's like, no. Even a rich person might check what they're ordering.
Yeah.
A wealthy person doesn't even know what things cost.
This guy could get upsold a steak by some stupid waiter who tells you it'll be worth it when you pay for the sides, the money you save for not buying the sides, and he wouldn't even flinch when he got that bill.
And he wouldn't hold a grudge for probably the rest of his life.
Wouldn't become a recurring bit on the podcast he produced.
It
or
wouldn't
anything
become
like
a
that.
story he has to retell at his birthday party to every single person in attendance.
His friends wouldn't get text messages to this day.
Yeah.
What did the steak cost, though?
Do you know the actual number? It's okay if this is an invasion of
Ben,
privacy
do you like
and you
this
can't
movie?
share it.
Do you like Handmaiden?
I did. I loved it.
Yeah.
Had you seen it before?
Nope.
Oh man, congrats.
Fucking
It's a saucy one.
owns bones, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It was a great way to start the day. It's hot stuff.
You did a nice morning Handmaiden.
I did indeed.
That sounds like a euphemism for stuff.
Cup of
does
Joe
sound
and
good, though.
Handmaiden.
Yep.
I spread it out over 2 nights. This rewatch.
That's what I did with the extended. I watched the theatrical like 2 nights ago, and then I did the extended evening and morning.
Did you
Evening
split
and
at the part 1, part 2?
Yes, I
Yes.
did exactly.
I mean, it makes sense, but I just don't know how you would stop. Like, I would just want to keep watching.
But it's a
just-
lovely. But there's such joy when you're doing something like that, where you're like, a treat awaits me tomorrow
Yeah,
night.
yeah.
You know?
Also, I had stopped it after already watching a previous
you'd already
version of it the
rewatched it,
night
right.
before.
Right.
Where I
I
was like,
hadn't
I can
seen
dole
it
this out now.
in a couple of years, although I have rewatched it. Give me a 4K of this movie.
I know.
like watching
I
it on
saw this.
Amazon.
I saw this like 2 times that year, and then hadn't seen it in 8 years. I mean, Criterion was doing a lot of Amazon releases for a moment there, and yes, the North American is out of print, and the extended's never been released, and they should put out a new disc.
Griffin, please be silent while I read to you some just thoughts that are occurring to me off the top of my head. With the busy fall season just around the corner, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. And so Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up with fast, chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, and you'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. So, you got your end of summer goals. Maybe you want to cook more. You also want to make sure you're eating well. Factor helps you skip that extra trip to the grocery store, helps you skip the shopping and prepping and cleaning up. You're still going to get the flavor and the nutritional quality you need because they're fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. All you got to do is heat and enjoy and get back to crushing your goals. You can choose from 34 plus weekly flavor-packed, dietitian-approved meals. They've got Gourmet Plus options that are more upscale. Got like broccolini and truffle butter and asparagus. They've got lunch to goes if you need stuff to bring for lunch. Grain bowls, salad toppers, stuff like that. They've got calorie smart meals that are around or less than 550 calories per serving if you're trying to be calorie conscious ahead of the busy season. So there's all kinds of options, and you can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions, source 100% renewable energy for production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in their meals at Factor. So this August, you can get Factor, enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/check50 and use code check50 to get 50% off. That's code check50 at factormeals.com/check50 to get 50% off.
I just wanted to shout out the interiors and the fashion.
Wallpapers.
Gosh.
I mean, Park does good wallpapers always, but
He's
just
going
the
hard on the
furniture,
wallpaper as usual.
the architecture, the suits,
the guys do look pretty cool.
Yeah.
especially
looks
the
amazing.
white bow tie.
Yeah.
It's such
Eyebrows.
a good look.
But I think
Old
he
man eyebrows.
purposefully, kind of also looks like a poor person's idea of a rich person. Like, that kind
Right,
of
he's
like,
so
he's
over the
too
top
snazzy.
fancy.
He's like got
Right,
spats
right.
on or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when he's found, so he, obviously he is she gives him the knockout drops and he
Right.
collapses
That's the thing he
mid-sex
promises
or
her
about to have
as a
sex with her.
wedding gift.
Right.
Her greatest fear is having what little agency she has
Going to the basement.
taken
Yeah.
away. Right. Doesn't want to be in the
He's like,
basement. So he goes, if you marry me and the worst case scenario, everything goes wrong, here's the ability to kill yourself through drops or at least knock yourself out.
But when he gets knocked out and then the guys find him the next day.
Yes.
And he's got shirt, no pants, but he's got the garters and he's got the garter belts.
Yeah.
He's so fancy.
I love that shot where he's like, he's almost like lounging, like a
hey, you mind throwing me though?
Can you hand me my pants?
He basically
He's
delivers
so hot. He's so hot.
I'm in trouble, aren't I?
Uh-oh, you guys look like a fancy fake samurai.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this is
just
his
take the
security
bill.
detail. This is the uncle's
Yeah.
security detail.
Right,
Right, these
like,
like
that's the
fake ass
idea.
samurai. It's
Yeah.
like
Right,
so funny.
he's like, I'm so Japanese, I have samurai in the 20th century
Yeah.
who are my bodyguards or whatever.
Yeah.
The third part's really pretty short. It's really just them
It's
going down to
like
the
a
basement
coda.
and smoking
Yeah.
a cig, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because at this
Yeah.
point, the girls are
They're
they got the
off on-
money, they're on the boat,
Right.
they forged the passport.
Right.
She's a man now
Yeah.
in the passport.
Right. Don't worry, I called into every office. They will not allow any two women to travel together.
Right. So
And they're
easy to
like-
forge a passport by them,
Right.
by the way.
Yeah. Also, so easy to apply a fake mustache.
Right. And then
Well,
you
look-
just have this incredible. I mean, I think I'm watching this movie the first time, and I'm like, okay, so are the girls gonna go ham on these guys?
Be gay, do crimes.
Well, no, right? Like we're gonna get in the torture chamber, and they're gonna be like chopping these guys up, and it's
well,
like, no,
especially
they don't
for,
even.
like,
They
the
torture
fucking
each
Mr.
other.
Vengeance trilogy.
I
Right.
know.
And there's,
It's so much
but there's
better.
something that's very, by the end, you're like, okay, we got our guys in one room, like
Right.
truly in the most miserable, awful place you could imagine, smoking poison cigarettes, cutting it off each other's fingers, just like killing each other, literally.
Yeah.
But also just like that's the bed they have made for themselves, and the bed that the ladies have made for themselves is much nicer. We should say.
Right, and
Yeah.
and the uncle is kind of like indignant and self-pitying, and the count is just like, we had this coming.
Yeah.
Like, can you really be angry?
He at least has the awareness of
Yes.
like,
yes.
yeah.
Well, the uncle is just like, so you had sex with her though? Like, what was that like?
Right.
He's like really pushing that.
Yeah.
While chopping his fingers off with
losing
a big blade.
his mind.
He's losing his mind over it, and it's like the perfect, this is all he wanted though. He would like all he wanted was to hear about what it would be like to have sex with her.
Right.
From somebody else. And he can only understand it. He's porn poisoned.
It's all weird Madonna whore stuff where it's like the second the women you're attracted to perform your greatest fantasies, they're sullied in your eyes, in the eyes of these men who want to keep these two identities of women separate.
But it's also the arm's length thing, and it's like I don't even want this vision, this fantasy to be sullied by a woman's presence or her real consent or anything. I want this to be told to me by a man, and be like 2 degrees away from it, and that's like what's gonna really get me off. And it's such a interesting way to embody his own shame at his identity and what he really wants, because that's again the thing that separates him and the Count, is that they are both pretending to be Japanese in this movie, but the Count is doing it as a means to an end. He doesn't really
he
have
really just wants to be able to order.
He doesn't want to be Japanese. He's doing it so he can get this money, whereas
to impress the guy who wants to be Japanese.
Right. And he is just completely blinkered and delusional at this point about who he is. It's like the shame, whatever part of him wants to disavow being Korean is so metastasized by now that he can't even, like, it's his whole identity, and that's sort of what separates them in the end.
And of course he's laced his cigarettes with mercury, and it's producing a lovely and very atmospheric sort of blue tinted smoke that kills them dead.
Kills the shit out of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess he wasn't inhaling, because I'm like, how did he not die first?
Well, but he is moving it around. I don't know. It's just a perfect romantic ending.
Oh,
I just love, he does like 3 cigarettes in like 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, he's right. He's really puffing them.
He like
and there's
lights
no
one
windows
up.
in there. If I'm the uncle, I'm like, no cigarettes.
Right, identified this.
And they do Chekhov's cigarette, because we see the blue cigarettes in his case before when he's being carted off by the fake samurai, and he takes the 3 normal ones and smokes them all together at once.
He smokes them all together,
like,
and they're like,
again, Looney Tunes shit.
Like,
but we've also seen that he hand rolls and he draws dirty pictures inside of his cigarettes, which is extra decadent, I suppose.
And while this is happening, cut to the girls on a boat putting the balls in their vaginas. Having a great time.
I don't think there's any better way to put it. I mean, in the canon of great Bell cinema we've covered on this podcast, it's really this and The Polar Express are the 2 great Can You Hear the Bells movies. I've been sitting on that joke for 2 days. I'm glad I didn't forget it.
Wondering what that was going to be.
Can you hear them jingle jangling?
Now, speaking of shame, it is worth noting, as I believe you already alluded, Emily, that pretty much as this movie comes out, a few weeks after it comes out in Korea, Kim Min-hee's affair with Hong Sang-soo, the prolific Korean director, comes out, and she is like a ruined celebrity in Korea.
This is like the peak of her stardom.
This was going to be the launch to like her international stardom. Yeah.
Yes. And then like the rumor hits the press, the 2 of them come out and publicly acknowledge it, and then she has since then not worked on a
she got dropped by her management.
She got dropped by her her management company, lost her endorsement deals.
Right.
She made a movie right after this with Hong Sang-soo called On the Beach at Night Alone, which Emily, you and I saw together.
Oh, we did. Yeah.
And which I think is such an amazing movie. I did.
Best Actress Blankie that year. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
And she's been in she's pretty much in all of his movies now.
Yeah.
I mean, the man.
And they're all kind of meta about her.
Right. That one is very.
That
meta.
One's super. That one's the most directly meta. But yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of that going on in them, and she remains an incredibly compelling performer. But it is crazy how like modern contemporary Korean society is so. Nervous or anxious or disgusted by infidelity or divorce and things like that. That like she.
I don't
can't
think
work
he's been
anymore.
able to get a divorce. He's not actually.
That's part
divorced.
of it. That's part of it. Right. Right.
So, at first it was that,
divorce was rejected
they were separated
by the court.
Yeah.
Which
that's wild.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
And Kim says, we love each other with all our hearts. We humbly accept everything, situations ahead of us, and that will come. There is some...
That's love, baby.
I know. There is some rumor that it's not entirely just like that it is partly just they've kind of just decided to do this. But who knows?
But there was
Decided to do
an immediate backlash.
Just work together and fuck
Right.
it. Like, fuck everyone else, like post-scandal. But it's very strange and ridiculous. She's incredible in this.
I hope for her sake that they never hit the rocks, because if you can only be in that guy's movies, well, yeah.
Look, if you're gonna only be in one director's movies, be in Hong Sang-soo movies. You get to be in 3 movies a year.
Yeah,
he's just gonna. I don't know. I'm not a huge Hong head.
It's I like him. He's good. Haven't seen the last 6 or whatever, aka
well, you were busy
2022. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's great because I think that scandal was largely did not really make it over here. So I think a lot of people saw that movie and are like, well, what the hell is she going to be in next? Because she's so amazing and gorgeous and just like such an incredible presence. And the answer was a bunch of Hong Sang-soo movies.
Now, Griffin, did you know that Park initially intended to shoot this film in 3D?
No, are you
Isn't
fucking
that crazy?
kidding me?
They should have just done 3D for the crotch shot. That would be cool.
Because he thought the house was so cool, and maybe he could have emphasized the perspectives of characters in a pronounced way. They couldn't make it work financially, he said.
2016 is, I feel like, basically the tail end of any serious filmmakers taking this on as an experiment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is there something to be done with 3D? And I'm waiting for the 5th wave of 3D.
It feels 3D without being 3D. It's fine. Like
definitely, it's popping off the screen.
It's a popper.
Yeah.
It was shot on digital, though they used some anamorphic lenses from like the 70s to sort of augment that or whatever. Park still thinks film is superior to digital, but whatever. They often will say that, and then they'll be like, it's cheaper, it's easier to control. It's, we understand.
Did I read correctly that it was, at the time of its release, the highest grossing South Korean film in the United States? Parasite has now obviously outgrossed it many times
There's no
over.
way that's true, because it only made $2 million in the U.S. Because it was an Amazon film.
Yeah.
They kind of only gave it a limited release.
Where was the stat? I saw?
They at least put out the films, though.
They used to put them out.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, frickin' Manchester by the Sea made like a lot of money. Like, they used to make money sometimes.
And Love and Mercy, no, not Love and Mercy. What's it called?
Love and Friendship. That made some money. It's
that
true.
Like quietly made like $20 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that one at like night. Weird. That was an Amazon too. That's weird.
That was an Amazon.
Yeah. Well, it was like Whitstone, Spike Lee. There's a few other like
Lonergan.
These guys where it's like, hey, do you want to make a movie?
Yeah.
No, but I think this movie, I am always surprised by how many people I know who are not necessarily movie people, who aren't even necessarily like, they're not like big park heads or whatever, but they have seen this. Like, I think this movie is fairly well seen by, a general movie-going public.
Sorry, my stat was wrong. It was the highest grossing park release domestically.
That makes sense.
The film outgrew Stoker and became the highest grossing Park Chan-wook directed film in the United States.
I don't think, did Stoker really do that badly?
I think Stoker did quite badly.
Stoker did. I mean, and to be fair, we talked about this on an
and
episode.
And then Old Boy only exploded on DVD.
Yeah.
It did outgrow Stoker.
No,
it did.
We're talking 1.7 to 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's not a huge jump here.
Yeah.
So,
what was the budget on this?
The budget on this film was $8 million, like $9 million US. It made like 40, mostly in Korea.
Hell yeah.
That's all up on the screen. That's amazing.
Yeah. Was big in the UK as well. Yeah.
Premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. The
Cannes
Film Festival.
Cannes Film Festival?
The Cannes Film Festival.
It's just Ken?
George Miller's jury, God, I love you, George. You're a good man. Decided to take a big poo-poo in the toilet that year.
What one?
Daniel Blake.
That's so funny.
Ken, take the palm. Take it. You need to. And the Handmaiden.
We talk about that movie a lot, though.
We're always bringing up Daniel Blake.
Yeah.
Can't use the phone, can I? Fucking government. It's an all right movie. But I'm making fun of it, but it's all right. But Tony Erdmann was obviously the big sort of hot movie that year, along with Handmaiden. Both got Handmaiden got blanked. Tony Erdmann got.
Oh my
I think,
God,
something.
I forgot completely about Tony Erdmann, but that movie is incredible. Wow.
Actually, no, Tony Erdmann didn't get anything. God.
Really?
Yeah, it was fucking. He gave it to Daniel Blake. He gave the Grand Prix to the Xavier Dolan movie. It's Only the End of the World, the one that everyone hated.
Yeah,
where they cut to Mads Mikkelsen looking like someone just like slapped him in the face.
Right. And then Xavier Dolan's response was, "I'm insulted that you didn't give me a better award."
Right, and
and
they
now
give
he's
the
not
jury
even
prize.
going to make a movie anymore. So
Sure.
Too bad.
What he definitely doesn't want us to do is talk about him.
Yeah.
I mean, he can make a movie if he wants to. Andrea Arnold won the jury prize for American Honey, which is an excellent film. But like, weird to watch The Handmaiden and be like, but maybe it was polarizing. I mean, thing with juries is if you polarize, or a couple people don't like it, you're in trouble.
We've talked about my theory, though, that often the jury head at a film festival, especially when it is a director, will award the film that they are most impressed by because it's the film they could least see themselves being able to pull off.
I love that theory. And so
is that why Spielberg gave it to blue as the warmest color?
Yes. No,
and
but this is my
Tim
argument.
Burton gave it to Uncle Boon Me, things
Right.
like that.
Right.
Right. And you could see George Miller being like, I could never make something as stripped down as Daniel Blake.
Yeah.
I could see that
I could
too.
never make a Ken Loach film.
He could never just film a guy being like, can't call the NHS. Fucking government. Film was a smash hit in Korea, made $31 million. Park's most successful film ever there, outgrossing JSA's 29. Amazon distributed it here with their friends at Magnolia Pictures. These alternate cut, as we mentioned, there was a ravenous reception. Loyal fans demanded an extended cut. Investors agreed because it was doing so well. They were like, come on, what do you got? What do you got? Right. So that's where that comes from.
Cool.
But Park has made it clear the theatrical cut is his intended cut. He's got no beef with it, but he's like the rhythmic standpoint, in my opinion, theatrical. Very acclaimed film. Weird, in my opinion, snubbed at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll kind of be chill and be like, we're going to throw a design nomination to a foreign film that looks so amazing.
Yes.
And like this could what's going on?
How is this not the most for me? I mean, I do think 2016 is a stacked year, but none of those things I think were nominated of the things I think of as loving in 2016. I think 2016 was like maybe the best year of that
good year?
decade. I'm gonna say that without looking things up. I'm gonna just put it out there. 2016 was the best year of the 10s.
Let's see.
Was this?
It's the Moonlight La La Land year.
Yeah, I'm looking what else here.
Oh, La La Land.
Wait a second.
Oh, you're talking about
Sully
the
landed
Oscars.
in 2016. No, I'm just looking at your letterbox. Hail Caesar, Lobster, Tony Erdmann, Arrival, Silence.
Yeah, it's a great year.
Jackie, The Fits.
Yeah, Shin Godzilla. You love
The Nice
that.
Guys. I love Shin Godzilla. He's a really good person.
Ooh, what's this one here?
What's
click.
that? Hi, Daniel Blake.
Wait a second. I've injured myself. I'm in a scenario. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
So Manohla Dargis raved this the first time a Park film got a New York Times critics pick.
She was not his biggest champion.
The Times in general would just run at him.
Yes.
He would release Old Boy and the Times would be like, has cinema gone too far?
Trash.
But anyway, so just like it did feel like a moment for him. Not that he's not a huge, massively respected name in the cinema world, but I don't know. It just felt like everyone was kind of like, have you made your opus, director?
I do think also, and I mean, it's sort of interesting that it did that much better than Stoker because I think it does sort of hint at what, I think we almost, post Parasite certainly, but I think, and what we were talking about, the Netflix is the globalization of Netflix and
Who?
What?
Netflix.
Internet movie flicks.
The internet movie flicks.
But yeah, that there is, I think that there is just more openness in general to foreign films that can break through like this in a way that I think, Old Boy was huge, but all on home video. It still felt like something that somebody had to, get you into in a way. Like you had to be reading the right blogs or whatever to see it. And this does feel kind of like the Handmaiden walked, but like box office wise, so Parasite could run. So
a little bit, sure.
And I do think also in general, like the South Korean cultural wave in general had made it that much easier for South Korean film specifically to hit here.
So we're gonna play the box office game, and I've decided that we will play for its second weekend. 2 reasons. One, that was when it went wider.
Okay.
Rather than just a couple screens. 2, the weekend before is Jack Reacher Never Go Back's box office
which
weekend. We covered in, I'm sure, immense depth.
Yeah.
So,
do you have the Korean box office as well?
It's a great question.
Can you do both?
Why not? Por qué no los dos?
Great.
Even though I have to go home. No. We're fine.
Jack Reacher Never Go Home.
When did not did Shin Godzilla come out?
September? Am I wrong?
September.
Oh God! Now I have to look that up.
Yeah.
What an incredible
October in America.
Just like what an incredible year. Shin Godzilla
Looks like
and
July
the Handmaiden
in Japan.
Holy shit!
You know what's crazy about Shin Godzilla?
How much it rules.
His eyes are all googly.
Yeah,
he got Google eyes.
I like when he's like the baby slug.
His second evolution.
When he's the weird slug, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Anyway.
What a good
All right,
movie.
the American box office. This is late October.
I like that he looks like an overcooked hot dog with googly eyes.
He does.
Yeah.
Number 1 is a Halloween film, a film celebrating the great holiday of Halloween.
I'm gonna guess it's called Halloween.
No.
Fuck.
It does have the word Halloween in it.
It does.
But no, this
But
film
it's not
has
David Gordon Green's Halloween.
No, this film is a comic take on the holiday.
It's a comic.
A beloved cinematic character, in fact, is peering down her glasses.
Boo.
What's the film called?
It's a Medea Halloween.
Medea's Halloween.
Halloween.
Is number 1 at the box office in its second week in a row.
A sensation. That poster that is a parody, the original Carpenter Halloween poster, is incredible.
I have called it out many times.
Yes.
I'm going to call it up right now.
When are they going to make Boo 3?
I mean, it's the funniest shit on the planet.
Yes.
There it is, if you can see it.
I can't see that.
Halloween.
It looks like a yeah.
it's just the Halloween poster with Medea glasses. It just works.
Amazing.
And the thing is, they did other ones. They did like an Exorcist one, or whatever.
Right,
and
but
they're
they're not as
fine.
good.
But there's nothing like this. It really speaks to how good the original Halloween poster is. That you can just we're like, I get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't as good when they did the second
the
one.
Shining one.
Anyway,
But-
all right. So that's number 1.
Wait, can we briefly talk about Handmaiden posters?
Oh, well,
Because-
that one that's like the sort of
The screen
with the
type.
trees.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I was remembering that one. I'm gonna fucking buy that thing. It's so
but
amazing.
the blocking of the kind of main poster where like they
the
each
4
have their hands
characters.
on each other.
Yeah, that's
like,
also
where
an incredible poster.
is so cool.
It's so good. No, both of them are fantastic. I just think that the screen style one, it's so so
pretty.
perfect. It's pretty. It's
But
also
then
kind of like
spooky.
nasty because when you look at it, you
There's a
see all
hanging
the
person.
The artificial eye Blu-ray, the menu is that.
That's cool.
And the selections are the little figures of them.
Oh wow.
For if you're doing like
Cool.
play movie special feature setup, whatever. Go on.
Yeah, beautiful
Go
poster.
on, David.
Number 2 at the box office was probably hoping to beat a Medea Halloween.
In the second weekend.
Yeah, in its second weekend.
Too bad it went up
is-
against a buzzsaw.
It is a huge flop. The
huge
literary adaptation. It's a sequel. Stars one of our great famed actors
Stars one of our most famous
returning
actors.
to a role he hadn't done in a while.
Oh, is it Blade Runner 2049?
No,
fuck.
that didn't do that badly. That
No.
didn't get bodied by Medea.
No, it didn't get bodied by Medea.
This was a huge flop.
This was a huge flop, and it was a return to the same role decades later kind of thing.
And it's not Jack Reacher.
It's
not Jack Reacher, but it is based on a book.
It is based on a book.
Yeah, because you
Jack
said a
Reacher is number
literary adaptation by with one of our biggest stars.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, fuck. What genre?
Thriller, but like, your heart rate will go 50 beats a minute type thriller. Museums. It's in the great genre of museums.
And at the museum too?
Genre of the museum.
But I think they have some nights at museums in this series.
They have some nights.
Well, it's just him, but it's always him with a girl. It's a different girl every time.
Oh, it's Inferno.
Inferno!
The third Robert
Oh my
Langdon down
God.
brand movie. Yes.
Oh,
Felicity
boy.
Jones.
That was like
That's
a
what she's-
decade later, right? That
Yep.
been
Yes.
decades since. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should watch these movies for the Patreon then.
That's a good
Here's
idea.
why. They're about, one of them is about the Illuminati.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have a lot to say about the Illuminati.
Do I? I don't know.
And then
No,
you're
if I
looking at the way that the listeners, the way that the Zoom is set up right now is that Griffin
Emily
and David
can't
are
see
looking
Ben.
at me like they are two panelists on a
Yes.
Q&A,
And
and
Ben
I'm
is
looking directly
behind
at them.
you on the
And I
screen.
guess I'm
Right.
on the side of the room that Ben's on, so they just
Yes.
pointed
Yes.
at me and said, "You have a lot to say about the Illuminati."
No, Griffin and I look like we're doing a talk back at the IFC set.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a joke for 10 people.
Yep.
Here's my counterpoint to the idea of doing the Robert Langdon trilogy.
Yeah, right.
I, during Deepest Darkest Lockdown, watched the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code.
For the first time for the our friends at the Can I Kick It podcast. And that movie is the most boring shit I have ever seen in my
Let's get that.
life.
We'll get
It
some
is
Z's.
interminable. It is
Get some Z's.
Listen.
15 hours long.
May I remind you about the reaction to us discussing the moon landing?
Yeah, everyone was chill about it.
Everyone was really cool about us just sort of like poking at fun at that.
We definitely didn't have a panic attack before even releasing that
And in
episode.
fact, Ben, now that you're reminding me of that, I've come around. I think we should do the Robert Langdon trilogy.
Illuminati. All right, number 3, Jack Reacher Never Go Back. Number 4, a surprise hit, an action thriller of
It
sorts.
is funny that you just have Tom's Hanks and Cruise grasping at straws.
Right, being
as
like, don't you want my
Medea's
book?
Fucking slashing her
Medea's like,
way to the top
"Hell
of the
are we?"
box office.
Number 4. Look, it's like a crime thriller.
Okay.
It's
Surprise hit.
a bit of a surprise hit.
Mm-hmm.
Boring title.
Boring title.
One of those movies that people are more and more kind of like,
To that kind of rule.
kind of fun, you know. It's
Tell me
this
about the
movie,
star of the picture.
you know, he's had his ups and downs.
He's had
his
his
swings
ups
and
and downs.
roundabouts. I like him a lot when he's good. I can't deny that he's sometimes been bad.
Sometimes he works for the UPS, maybe a bit of a mailman.
Sometimes, but also he's a filmmaker in his own right.
Interesting.
And this is one of the movies he made where you're like, okay, so this is kind of like a pay job, and then it was actually like a hit, like a moderate hit. There's a lot of talk of sequelizing it, but it's never come to pass. Probably because this guy's fucking busy.
Oh, it's The Accountant.
The Accountant.
The Accountant.
Ben Affleck is The Accountant.
Which was like quietly a big titty hit.
Yes.
It's
Made
crazy how
150
much
worldwide.
this week or this month or whatever is completely memory hold for me. And
Yes.
even as somebody who's still working and covering culture, I usually remember all
But
those
you were
weeks
at,
pretty well.
I feel like you were at The Verge.
Yeah,
or
I was
were
in
you-
the very, very
yeah.
tail end of my
Which was a
tenure at
great
The
time
Verge.
for you.
Yeah.
It was
you
amazing.
were on the verge
I
of
had a great
leaving The
time.
Verge.
Yeah,
We had some
yeah.
very chill dinners at that. I remember back then, you know, and you were like, "How's work?" And you're
I
like,
believe
"Good."
I was co-hosting the Mr. Robot after show on
I remember
Facebook
that.
Live, which I believe drove me insane. And I think this is all in past statute of limitations. I'm talking about that.
Yeah, no,
I went
no one
absolutely
can
bananas
probably
and-
find it.
Yeah, it was cool. But anyway, maybe that's why I didn't see.
The Accountant.
The Accountant. You didn't see Ben
Inferno.
Affleck.
Yeah, I didn't see.
You didn't
Before
get your
did
books
some
balanced.
accounting.
No, I did not get my books balanced.
Number 5 at the box office, a prequel horror film
Okay.
that is so fucking good.
Ouija, Origin of Evil.
That is correct.
had to be the answer.
Mike Flanagan's fantastic film, Ouija,
Yeah.
Origin of Evil.
Yeah.
Which combines the sort of, like vintage throwbacky scares of Mike Flanagan with a blessed hour and 39-minute running time,
Yes.
which
A
he
movie
stopped giving us.
the whip scrote.
So good. The Korean box office, briefly.
Okay.
Number 1, The Handmaiden.
Fuck. So they
Korea.
beat
Oh,
Boo.
yeah.
Yeah, well, this is July or late May, so it's a little.
Oh, so they-
Medea hasn't
okay.
shown up yet. I'm sure Korea and Japan have very chill opinions
Medea.
on Medea.
Yeah.
I'm sure Medea is always coming out there. No, I have no idea Medea's cultural reach. Number 2, comic book sequel. Terrible.
Number 2 is a terrible comic book sequel.
Some people like it.
It's not
was
a Marvel.
Was it what's his face? The Doctor Strange.
It's not the Good Doctor.
No, because that was the first Doctor Strange. Never mind.
Wait, but it's not a Marvel?
Well, it's
X-Men Apocalypse?
It's X-Men Apocalypse.
The movie that embarrassingly caused me to originally coin the term A Gentleman's Six. That was the first movie I ever applied that to.
That was not A Gentleman's
Which
Six,
is almost
in my opinion.
incriminating. Yeah.
Number 3 is a Korean film, horror film, that fucking rocks. And I feel like they keep threatening to remake in America. That I bet you have seen, Emily. Maybe not.
2016 Korean horror film.
The director is Na Hong-jin. It's about a policeman investigating mysterious killings in a remote village.
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, what movie is this?
It's called The Wailing.
Oh,
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Cool. Big hit.
Okay.
All right. Now, the weirdest thing is the 4th and 5th.
Okay.
Both American films.
Mm-hmm.
Both like rom.
May.
Well, this is a rom-dram.
May 2016. It's a rom-dram.
Yes.
Is it based on...
It's based on a novel.
It's not a Sparks?
No, but that vibe.
It's in that mode.
It's about a sort of a couple who there's problems beyond their control, health issues.
Okay, it's
but they
not
love each
The
other.
Fault in Our Stars.
No, they're older than that.
They're older than
Health
that.
issues.
It stars a Game of Thrones and a Hunger Game.
Oh, it's
2
the
games.
Fucking what's it called? Me Without You.
Emilia Clarke.
That's how
and
old
Sam
that is.
Claflin.
And Sam Claflin. Yeah.
Claflin in Me Before
Me
You.
Before You.
I can't believe that movie came
doing
out
well in
that long
Korea.
ago.
Yeah, that's upsetting. And a passage of time. Wait, that movie also did weirdly well in North
It did
America.
quite well. People liked it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it's like people actually
Was
did
it
like
a brain
these,
problem?
I think he's in a wheelchair,
Right,
but I
I
cannot remember the reason why because I
Yes.
didn't see the film out of disinterest.
Yeah.
Number 5 is a charming indie musical.
Interesting. An indie musical.
People love this movie.
People love.
I have always found it to be okay, but that's how I feel about this
think
director.
it's a bad
always.
movie. Is that my opinion?
You think it's a
on this
bad
movie?
movie?
Do I?
Do you
Is
like
that my
it?
opinion on this movie?
You tell me.
Do you think you know what it is, Emily?
I think I know what it is, but
What do you think it is?
well, I mean, it's 20. I think it's La La Land.
It's not La La Land.
Oh.
It is not La La Land. I think La La Land is a good movie.
And I'm with Emily on that one.
I don't think it's the best movie ever made.
I like when it was
think it's
remade in
generally good.
2022 as Babylon.
Yeah, a better film.
I think that one is. Yeah.
And David, also, I'll say you and I do both agree on La La Land, in that it is not the single best film ever made.
Sure.
I'm firmly in the camp of it
yeah.
not being the
Not the
number
best film
one
ever
best
made.
film ever
That's
made.
your Arnie and Carl Weathers moment.
No,
Yes.
come on. What is this?
What is this? It's an
Charming
indie,
indie musical. How many of
Musical?
those are there?
but not like a diegetic musical.
Is it
Yeah, they're fucking in a band. They're singing
Oh,
songs.
Sing Street.
Sing Street.
Oh, that movie rules.
Yeah, it's okay.
That movie's fucking incredible. I
Alright,
can't believe it
okay.
was blowing up the box office in Korea.
Well, it's number 5. It's doing all right.
Yeah, it's doing pretty
Punching
damn well.
above its weight.
You
think
know,
that movie's
this is
lovely.
the thing. Anytime I have looked
alright.
at stuff that
lovely.
hits in, you know,
It's
in
lovely.
Korea and Japan,
Yeah.
it tends to be shit like that though. And then you're like, why is there this mandate, especially back then, less so now, that like the only thing that's gonna hit over there are fucking Marvel movies or things with Tom Cruise in them. Like it like everybody loves musicals and people kissing.
Yeah.
And those travel well.
It's true. People love to kiss.
People love people kissing.
People kiss everywhere.
Yeah.
Number 6 is
It's the universal language.
Number 6 is the Korean box
universal
office.
language.
And the Angry Birds movie.
Oh,
Oh my God. I remember I had to see the Angry Birds movie. Oh my God.
There's also a Korean horror film called Horror Stories 3. Appears to be an omnibus.
there's also an American horror film in the box office called The Angry Birds movie,
Uh-huh.
a horrifying cultural export.
There's a sweet sort of grandma movie called Canola that is a Korean film.
And there's kind of an awful Angry Bird movie called The Angry Birds movie.
There is a film called Our Times. Can't really find much on that one.
How much later the Angry Birds movie came out after everybody had stopped playing Angry Birds?
Yes.
They took
so amazing. It was like a decade. Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
And then they like barely like kind of squeaked out a success, and they were like, so sequel time, right? There's a hunger for more of this. It'll take another 3 years to get a sequel into theaters. We don't think we've overstayed our welcome.
Wonder if you ask an average teen today if they know what Angry Birds is. Like,
and
I think a teenager today would view Angry Birds the way we view
Mario Bros.
No, the way we view exactly, like fucking
Jacks.
gramophones.
Yes.
yeah.
Number 10 at the Korean box office, of course, is the prequel to Brahms the Boy 2, some movie called The Boy. Obviously, I'm only a Brahms the Boy 2 stan. For me, the series starts with Brahms the Boy 2.
It's a bit of a New Hope episode
Yeah,
one
yeah,
situation.
Bit of Final Fantasy.
Haven't seen that. I did see that director made the Orphan sequel, and I did watch that.
Oh, interesting. You
was-
liked that,
It
right?
was okay.
First Kill?
I mean, you just like to see Isabel Furman pop off.
Yeah, I want to see Orphan Last Kill.
Well, but then, then it's over. Sad.
She's like 95.
Yeah, sure. But she still looks, she's still
of
little.
course. Yeah.
All right. That's the box office. I got to go make dinner. But is there any closing thoughts on The Handmaiden from any of us?
I love it.
It's very good.
I'm just like, this is what
It's
I want
really
movies
quite
to be.
an
It's a full
accomplishment.
fucking meal.
It's a full meal. That's exactly. Yeah.
It's thrilling,
Movies can't always be
romantic, and-
this.
No,
because
but-
then we might be overstuffed, you
Yeah.
know? And then once in a while, you get served a 5-course meal like this.
You know, it is the thing about this movie, though, is it's so good and it's so entertaining that you sometimes make the mistake of thinking you could watch it with, say, a parent. And then
Right, because you're like, well, it's a period piece.
Yeah.
It's a
Right,
weird piece.
you
It's
know?
so beautiful. Like, it's so
based on a
fun.
book.
You won't believe this twist in the middle. And then you're like, oh, no, this hasn't happened to me personally, but it's like, oh, no, I'm watching the Scissoring scene with my mom. It's so cool.
Titties.
I'll say this: the film does in fact have titties in it. I will say that I've never made the mistake of watching it with someone who I wouldn't feel comfortable sitting next to while watching it. But this is like, it's in the 7 years since this movie came out, this is one of my default go-to anyone asks me for a movie recommendation movies.
Sure, yeah.
It's just the fact that I know it's on Amazon all the time.
Right.
And if they're like someone who's like open-minded but maybe has not really delved into foreign film.
You know what movie might blow your mind? The Handmaiden.
Yeah. And they're like, what do I have to know about it? I'm like, nothing.
Right. And I'm always just like, okay, take your Apple, type this in BRAHMS : THE : BOY : II.
Yes.
I,DAN.
Will it make sense if they haven't seen The Boy, though?
I'm like, we don't talk about the boy.
Is The Boy's name Brahms, or is Brahms the name of something else?
Well, we'll find out sometime later on a different episode. Mama. Sorry, I hate saying that.
Yes.
Wow, that sucked.
Yes,
Emily, my
boys.
friend
Mother.
Emily.
Mother, please.
Emily,
Yes.
thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
When does this episode come out?
Late August.
Okay.
Okay.
Why?
No, I'm just like hoping. I was going to
You'll
ask
be
if you-
flying back from Edinburgh.
Yeah. No, I was
if
gonna
I
ask
have
if Emily
anything to
wanted-
plug.
I was going to ask if you want to plug Strike Solidarity, but then I'm also like, imagine if it's over when this comes out.
It's starting to feel like
I think it. Well,
maybe
we'll
no.
find out about your guild. What's
Well,
going
if
on?
you guys go on strike,
We're
Yeah.
recording on the day that the strike decision is supposed to be made.
I
for
think it's
SAG.
tomorrow.
Well, no, Fran's,
the 12th.
I think it's tomorrow. It's Thursday.
Oh, really? Why do you think it was today?
Well, because Fran has to get back from Venice where she was partying with Kim K or
Man,
whatever.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But if you guys go on strike, there's argument it actually might accelerate the end, right? That's
Yeah,
good for
yeah,
you guys.
Yes.
I mean, for you guys.
Oh,
The writers
God,
are
this is
generally
terrible
rooting
news.
for you guys to go on strike, but I
Yeah.
will not.
Yeah,
withhold
no,
my
I'm in
opinion
I
right
think
now.
we need to burn the whole system down. I just have some terrible news to share with the
What's
podcast.
that?
Occasionally, we get like an exciting deadline update while we're recording,
Sure.
and we get to capture the reaction on mic.
Right. Promise the Boy 3.
No, I regret to inform you, and I hate that I'm the one who has to give you this
Angry Birds
news.
2?
Jimmy Weldon died.
Who's that?
I don't know why this
Why are you
is
laughing?
getting to me so
The
much.
man
Jesus
died.
Christ.
Jimmy Weldon.
I'm gonna have to read it.
Jimmy Weldon died. Okay, I'm
you're
gonna hand it
really losing it,
to- I fucked up my own bit.
and I gotta go.
I just looked it
The
up.
voice of Hanna-Barbera's Yankee Doodle Duck. He was 99 years old.
Something about the headline.
It's
Voice
is
Hanna
it, it's
Barbera's
not
Yacky
Yank,
Doodle
it's
Duck.
Yacky Doodle Duck.
Yacky
Yacky Doodle.
Doodle.
I'm so sorry. I was
Yeah.
cold reading. I was cold reading that.
Just something with this sense. Yeah, Hanna-Barbera's Yacky Doodle Duck was 99. I know I'm cutting off the first.
He was a
couple of words there.
1940s era disc jockey. Like they invented discs pretty quickly after, before.
He was one of the best to ever do. And I'm sorry if this
Salute
sounds
to him.
disrespectful.
Like, yeah, he's a good
bookmarked
guy.
this death so hard in my mind that I'm going to be waiting with like on the edge of my seat during the in memoriam at the Oscars next year.
Yeah, right. Yacky Doodle Duck.
Yacky Doodle Duck.
Thoughts and
And
prayers
of course, if this
to the
guy gets
family of
Yacky Doodle
Yacky Doodle.
milkshake ducked afterwards, and
Right.
it turns out he was bad or something, I disavow everything I said about him being good.
Of course.
Yes.
But I think Yacky Doodle Duck's an unproblematic king. No choice
I'm
but
sure.
to stand.
I'm sure there's no bad Yacky Doodle Ducks out there.
Prayers up.
All right, we gotta go.
Emily, thank you for
Thanks for
zooming in.
having me. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but
Hey.
I think this setup works.
It does.
Yeah.
It
No,
took
it's
some
good.
time to get it working. But Ben, you made it work, baby. Love
Thanks,
you and you're the best in the
Ben.
biz.
Ben's the best in the biz.
Ben's the best in the biz.
it's sort of weird to not see Ben at all. Usually
I know.
seen him.
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah.
Turn it around. I don't know.
How do you feel about not seeing Ben
This
at
is what it
all?
was like in the old studio days.
It's true.
When our UCB studio was so
That's
small that
right.
Ben had to be in a
Yeah.
different room and he would just pipe in.
in
Yeah.
a smaller room.
That
Yeah.
fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I mean, it wasn't
Sucked
good.
ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll be over here mopping up the floor.
Our AC's busted. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to promote the show and produce the show. I don't know why I said promote.
Should just help.
Thank you to JJ Burst for our research, AJ McKee and Alex Barron for our editing, Leigh Montgomery and the Great American All for our theme song, Joe Bowen, Pat Reynolds for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check special features, where we are doing the Oceans movies and also Little Drummer Girl this month.
Yep. I think we probably just did that.
I think that just happened.
Finishing Oceans. Yeah.
Yeah. Tune in next week for the end of Part Jam book with Decisional Leave with guest Tatiana Maslany,
That's right.
which is a really exciting one. I
Wow,
think it's
cool.
a good episode.
She's real cool.
She's a cool ass person.
She's a real cucumber. Cool as.
She's a real cucumber. And I'm sure she's going to be thrilled to hear us describe her that way.
She's a chiller.
She's a chiller. She's a real cucumber. And as always, thoughts and prayers to Stanley Tucci. We hope you get the touchback. And also
Maybe
to
he
the
can be the
family.
new Yacky Doodle Duck.
That's the answer.
Bye.